Sparkling wine for all demos. Signed, Chris Jericho. Oh, hello. Welcome. This is the first Sound Off Inbox in a year. We are live on YouTube. This is Sound Off Inbox Anniversary Edition. I am the Solomonster. Thank you so much for joining me here on a Thursday night. Not a typical night for us, but it's a very special occasion, and I'm glad all of you can join me. So, this is, of course, the entire month of November. We are celebrating 13 years of the Solomonster Sounds Off. Started the podcast in November of 2007. Some people who are joining us tonight may have been listening to the show from day one. We might have some people who are here tonight who are brand new listeners, who have no idea what a Solomonster even is. I'm so happy that all of you can join me here for this very special inbox. We are going to take your questions. That is what this podcast is for tonight. Email questions that I have culled. Many email questions that have been emailed to me. I think I've got about 17 on my list. And super chats are open. So not only is it a great way for you to support the channel, but if you want to get your questions in, I will include your super chats. I will read each and every one of them here, so long as I don't get thrown off like we were at the end of the Dynamite stream last night. Don't know what happened there. That was a little glitch in the Matrix, I think, unfortunately. And hopefully that will not happen again tonight. But if it does, a little word to the wise, if there is a freeze or something happens again, I think it's more of an internet issue. I know YouTube was having problems last night. Try refreshing. If that doesn't work, I may have to restart the stream, but hopefully we won't have any problems tonight. Now, I did mention on the stream that one thing I was going to do tonight, it is a celebratory occasion, and I don't know if he's in the chat right now. I don't know if he's in or not. Jackalope, if you're here, let me know in the chat. Jackalope Music is a fan of the podcast, and for a birthday gift last month, he sent me 2 bottles of the Chris Jericho Little Bit of the Bubbly. And I've been holding on to it. I did pop the cork because I didn't want to have a cork go flying around here. But I figured I would save it for the stream. And I would give it a whirl, see how it is. So I'm going to pour one out right now. This is the first time trying the Chris Jericho Bubbly. We're going to see how it is. So, can't think of a more special occasion than the anniversary of the podcast. There we go. All right. Not really a bubbly guy, but I figure, cheers. Thank you to everybody who has supported the show for all these years. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I give it a thumbs up. Then again, you put any kind of liquor in front of me on a celebratory occasion, I'm probably going to like it anyway, no matter what. So, tomorrow is Friday the 13th. I've already gotten questions from people asking me, how come you didn't do this tomorrow night? I didn't want to interfere with all the SmackDown stuff going on, so it is the eve of Friday the 13th. I don't think I could have timed it any better. Please let me know what you think of this stream. You can leave feedback on Twitter at Solomonster if you want more of these inboxes. I do plan on doing more of these. You can email questions to me all the time. thesolomonster@gmail.com is the email address. You can also leave comments in the comments section of this video down below. Because as I do more of these episodes, I will pull questions from there as well. So don't forget, before you leave tonight, you can leave a question down below and give this video a like if you would be so kind. So, I will get through some super chats here that came in before we started. And I got to start with my boy, Abdul Rahman, who dropped a 50 spot probably about an hour and a half before I even went live. Abdul, you are awesome. Happy 13-year anniversary, he says. Hope more years to come. And Cameron Grimes is going to the moon. Cameron Grimes is indeed going to the moon. He has become one of my must-sees every week on NXT. And Oz and Glorious with the 5 happy anniversary. I know some of the super chats got lost at the end last night when the stream cut out. I did read everything you sent me. And JWD remembers listening to the podcast in 2009. That's what I'm talking about. I hear from people all the time, man, I was listening from episode 12, episode 36. And it's crazy to think that I've been coming on here and just talking about wrestling with all of you for that long. There weren't as many podcasts in 2007 as there are now. Everybody now has a podcast. Everybody. Every fan has a podcast. Every wrestler, every retired wrestler has a podcast. Doesn't feel as special anymore. But when I started the show, I was still calling them audio shows. That's how much of an old fart I am. So it is very cool for you to all be here joining me. So if you remember the old inbox format, this might look a little familiar to you. We're going to go question by question. Again, these are the questions that came in via email. And the solomonster@gmail.com, you'll see it on your screen. If it's not blocked out by a super chat, that is always the email address to send questions over to me. You may always do so. We're going to start here with an email question from Paolo from Sicily. We're going to an international listener. We had a lot of international questions who got sent in. I love hearing from all the international people out there. And Paolo says that this podcast helped him with his English, which is awesome. That's very cool to hear. Says you've mentioned the word notwithstanding as being a Vince-ism. My question to you are, what other Vince McMahon isms are there? Well, actually, there are quite a few Vince McMahon isms. That's just one. I think that's one of his favorite ones, notwithstanding. If you ever read a WWE PR statement or a press release, a response to something, if the word notwithstanding is in there, that is from the Vince McMahon lexicon. I mean, that is just a Vince word. You know that he put it in there if you hear that word used. Nonetheless is another one. Furthermore, quite frankly, I would suggest, these are all what I consider to be Vince-isms. I would suggest is another favorite of mine. And as such, you'll hear him say that as well. Of course, you guys all know what a maneuver. 1, 2, he got it. No, he did. No, he did. Those are some Vince McMahon announcer-isms. So I hope that helped. Paolo, I hope that helps you out. Bill. We got Bill from Brick, New Jersey, outside of the obvious names, Darby, MJF, and Hangman. Who are the other stars that you see breaking out in AEW over the next couple of years? Well, MJF, Darby Allin, Hangman Page, those are the obvious ones. Jungle Boy is another. Luchasaurus. Luchasaurus and his whole crew, they've lost a lot of steam in the last few months. I feel like they're not being featured as much. But before the pandemic hit, everybody was talking about Luchasaurus, even more so than Jungle Boy. Look at this guy. He's big. He can do all these fancy moves. He's so agile for a guy of his size. And everybody I thought the same thing. This guy has world title potential. And I still feel that way. Even though he's not featured as much, I still feel that Luchasaurus kind of gets lost in the conversation sometimes when I hear people talking about Jungle Boy. I don't know how old he is, but I think he's definitely a potential breakout star in the future. I would put other names on there. You know, you've got Sammy Guevara. You've got Wardlow. Don't sleep on Wardlow. And I think as a babyface, once he breaks away from MJF, I would definitely put Wardlow on that list. Scorpio Sky. Ricky Starks. Big fan of Ricky Starks. Ricky Starks can talk. Ricky Starks can work. The only thing he's got going against him is the fact that he's not a big guy. But AEW has a lot of guys who aren't that physically big. So I think Ricky Starks, as much as anybody, fits right in that category. Will Hobbs is somebody who they're really starting to focus on, but it's too early to know. You know, I haven't seen a lot of Will Hobbs. He's still very new. He's still very green. I think it's hard to say about somebody like Will Hobbs. But those are the names that come to mind. They got a solid core of young talent, a solid core of guys there who I think are poised to break out and become big stars. And who knows? You know, everybody talks about who's going from WWE to AEW. We really have yet to see that big name go from AEW to WWE. It's going to happen at some point. Who's going to be the first? Who's going to be the first AEW pickup who goes to WWE? That's an interesting question. We don't know the answer yet. One Big Dingus wants to know what happened to Jeff Cobb. Jeff Cobb is with New Japan. Jeff Cobb had an offer on the table from AEW, and he decided to go to New Japan. So that is where Jeff Cobb is at the moment. You know, this bubbly, I got to tell you, this bubbly is actually, it's not bad at all. I'm going to take some more here. It's my party. I can do what I want. Plus, if I don't drink enough of this, I don't have a cork to put back in the bottle. So this thing is going to probably go and get spoiled in the next day or two. So if I don't take advantage of this now, this is going to go to waste. There you go. JR. Let's go to JR. He's our next question from Compton, California. And JR wants to know, who is your favorite wrestler of all time and why? So that question comes from JR from Compton. He wants to know, who is your favorite wrestler of all time and why? Well, anybody who knows me and anybody who listens to the podcast knows that my favorite of all time is Bret the Hitman Hart. As a kid, I was a Hulkamaniac, as a lot of other kids were. But as I grew up, through the new generation era, into the latter part of the 90s, I gained a whole new appreciation for Bret Hart. He was always a big fan of the Hart Foundation, and when he broke away and started to have these great matches against Roddy Piper and Mr. Perfect, you know, at Madison Square Garden, and the King of the Ring, and then some of the classic WrestleMania matches with Owen and Stone Cold, one of the greatest matches in company history, that's where the worm turned, and Bret became my favorite. And as far as why, Bret Hart, I'm pretty sure it was Bret who had this quote, and I don't remember where or when he said it, but he had this great quote, and it always stuck with me. And he said, the real art of being a pro wrestler is giving the illusion that you're harming your opponent, that you're hurting them, when in reality, you're not harming a hair on their head. And that always stuck with me, because really, that is what pro wrestling is, right? You're giving the illusion of hurting your opponent. You hate this guy. Maybe you got a personal issue with them. You're going in there. You just want to kill him. But when the match is over and you go to the back, the other guy is in the same condition he was when he walked out to the ring. And you shake hands and you go about your business, because you got him. They bought into it. And Bret was so good at that. He could go in there and tell a story just by the way he sold. Everybody talks about people like Mr. Perfect and what big bumpers they were, and Shawn Michaels, and oh my God, these guys that can sell. Bret Hart is one of the best sellers I've ever seen, because he could sell believably. It wasn't these over-exaggerated cartoony bumps that he would take. He truly looked like a guy when he was in the ring who was going in there and getting the shit kicked out of him. And then he would fight his way back. It's one of the reasons why I love that King of the Ring pay-per-view in 1993 so much. You know, wrestling 3 matches in one night, 3 different types of opponents. It was fantastic. There has not been a King of the Ring tournament as good since the first one that aired on pay-per-view. And that was because of Bret. So that's what I appreciated about him. I thought his promos got better as the years went on. He wasn't the greatest promo, but I think people who say he couldn't cut a promo and didn't know how to cut a promo they don't know what they're talking about. They've been hitting the sauce too much. Because I can probably just pick out 3 or 4 off the top of my head, including some of the stuff he did in WCW, promo-wise. Bret Hart could cut a promo. From 1997 on, Bret Hart could cut a promo. So for a lot of reasons, I'm a big Bret fan. He's my favorite. But you already knew that. Right? You guys already knew that. CJ LaChapelle, one of our mods in the chat, shout out to CJ, wants to know, why are you so against Edge having one more championship run? I would love to see Edge have one more reign. Look, if Edge has one more reign, it's not the end of the world. I'm not saying it's the worst thing to happen. What I'm saying is that Edge now is 46, 47 years old, 48, whatever he is. Edge is something like a 10 or 11 time world champion. I just don't need to see it. I think the focus needs to be more on the current crop of stars. Drew McIntyre had what I thought was a relatively strong run as the WWE champion. It just came at the worst possible time. I'd rather see guys like that elevated and focused on and carrying the championship instead of going back in time. Edge can wrestle a whole bunch of different people that he's never wrestled before. Why does Edge have to be the champion? We've already seen it. Been there, done that. Was he trying to break some kind of record? He's not close to the record. John Cena is close to the record. Randy Orton is close to the record. You know, if they want to tell that story, then fine. I just don't need to see it. That's why I don't have any interest in seeing Edge with the world title. It's a good nostalgia moment, but that's all it is. So that's the only reason why I feel that way. It's not that I have anything against Edge, you know, personally. I just don't see what it really accomplishes. Tibbs 316 with the $20. Thank you, Tibbs. We all know what your favorite Rumble is, but which do you think was the best WCW World War III? And happy anniversary. Well, I got to be honest, I don't know that I saw every single World War III. So I can't really say. I remember the one that Scott Hall won. I don't really have a lot of memories of the other World War III pay-per-views. I never liked World War III. I liked the Royal Rumble. Was never really a fan of World War III. Too many guys. 3 rings, 60 guys. So you can imagine most of those 60 guys were scrubs. Well, then why even have 60? Just for the visual of it, it was hard to follow what was going on. So not a fan of World War III. And can't really answer the question just because I didn't see all of the events. And I only have vague memories of those pay-per-views that I did see. Obed Velasco, thank you for the $1. Appreciate that. And Matthew Martin. I get that you think Edge doesn't need the title, but when I think of who Edge is, he was a guy who was obsessed with the world title. In a way, don't you think it fits for him to be chasing the title? It fits for everybody to be chasing the title. It doesn't mean that he should be, you know? Especially he's not back full time. So if Edge is only in for a certain number of matches a year, that's something that people are forgetting here. Edge is not back with a full-time or even like a full part-time schedule. I think the rumor was that Edge had X number of matches that he was obligated to in a given year. Now, I don't know how COVID and his injury affects that, if he'll have more matches next year or not. But you don't even have him for the standard number of matches that you would have a Drew McIntyre for or somebody who is full-time on your roster. By the way, people evolve. Edge is 10 years older than he was when he was the ultimate opportunist and he was obsessed with being the world champion. He's grown. He's got kids. They can tell that story arc too. His priorities have changed. So, nice try. But my opinion has not changed. I still feel the same way that I felt before. All right, let's move on here to Jason from the Bronx. Not to be confused with Jason from Brooklyn, we go to Jason from the Bronx. What do you consider to be the greatest heel turn in the history of wrestling? My number 1 would be Hulk Hogan at Bash at the Beach. And my number 2 would be Bret Hart at WrestleMania 13. I think both pulled it off flawlessly. Do you agree? Yes. There is no other correct answer than Hulk Hogan turning heel and joining the New World Order at Bash at the Beach in 1996. That's it. I mean, there is no other. You can certainly suggest another answer, but you would be wrong. That is the greatest heel turn in wrestling history. Not only did it add years to Hogan's career, I would say the NWO and the heel turn added a good 5 years to Hogan's career, as far as like being more of a full-time guy. But, you know, beyond that, what is so amazing about it when you think of the Hogan heel turn, and yes, you know, Bret Hart and Andre, I mean, there have been some classic heel turns in wrestling. But the Hogan one in 96 tops it all. And I think the thing that puts it over the top for me is the fact that he helped launch or usher in 2 different boom periods in 2 different promotions. So when Hogan came into WWE, right, When he came into WWE, he was a babyface. When he turned in WCW, he turned heel. I can't think of another person who has ushered in two different boom periods the way Hogan did. One is a babyface and one is a heel. Because when he came in WWE, he was the golden goose for Vince McMahon. And under Hulkamania, things just skyrocketed, right? Through the mid-'80s into the late 80s. In 96, when he turned heel, that was what sealed the deal. And that is what set the NWO and WCW on its course to kick Vince McMahon's ass for 83 straight weeks. Nobody else can claim to have done that. Only Hogan. Only Hogan. And that boom period that WCW had a lot to do with that turn. So, again, that's why I say there really can be no other answer. It was shocking. I know some people saw it coming. Hogan even tested the waters the year before. Remember when Hogan was showing up? The mustache was shaved off by the Dungeon of Doom, which he always looked weird without the mustache. But he was wearing all black. It's almost like they gave him a test run to see how the crowds would react in late 95. So I feel like the writing was kind of on the wall. Some people probably knew at some point that he was going to turn heel. But it still was just a shocking thing if you go back and, you watch it again. And I could tell you this, just from personal experience. A lot of friends of mine and people at class the next day, all they were talking about was what happened at Bash at the Beach. And that goes for even the people who claimed, oh, I don't watch that fake wrestling stuff. Boy, for people that don't watch that fake wrestling stuff, they were talking a lot about Hulk Hogan the next day. So that tells you something right there. Bret Hart in 1997 would be my number 2 as far as heel turns are concerned. I would throw Randy Savage on there as well. Yeah, he might be my number 3. Randy Savage attacking Hulk Hogan when the Mega Power split on the main event in 89. That was when Elizabeth took that bump outside the ring and Savage jumped Hogan in the back when the match was over. If you want to expand that out a little bit, I think that you have to mention the Freebirds turning on the Von Erichs, which I was not familiar with that as a kid, but I became familiar with it in later years. In World Class, that would have to be on the list. And Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels super kicking Marty Jannetty through on the barbershop before the cowardly Jannetty dove through the window trying to escape. Let's take some more of your super chats. We got a lot of them coming in. Feed me. Feed me more. Marius Kozak with the $5. Can't believe Friday marks 15 years since Eddie Guerrero's passing. He and Benoit got me into WWE. Which superstar has ignited your passion for wrestling? Well, Hogan, I mentioned that before. He was the big star when I was coming up as a young fan. Hogan, Macho Man, Demolition. Those, I would say, those are the ones that stand out to me. I was a WWE guy. I was a WWF guy. I wasn't really an NWA guy until I started to watch it a little bit more in like the early 90s. But had I lived up in New England, had I lived in the Carolinas, it might have been a little bit different. But my exposure as a kid was to Superstars and Wrestling Challenge and Saturday Night's Main Event. So those are the guys who would be on my list. Cameron Johnson, not to be confused with Cameron Grimes. Just wanted to let you know I have been a listener since 2015, and there is no one whose reviews I trust more than yours. Thank you for 13 years. Well, I appreciate that. That is very cool. Very nice of you to say that. EJCM with the $10. Thought that said Slemp for a second. EJ, what's going on? Do you think Davey Richards could make a comeback, or is his career over? I think that all of the great Ring of Honor wrestlers who have gone on to bigger things, and he never did. So what do you think is his legacy? I think that if Davey Richards came back, he would probably do well. I don't know that he would go on to have the same level of success that maybe he would have had he not gone away. Because now there's been so many guys who have come in who kind of look like him and wrestle like him. I don't know. He always had an explosiveness about him that reminded me a lot of Dynamite Kid and Benoit. But I don't know that he would stand out as much. And there's a lot of stories out there about people who didn't have positive interactions with him, who worked with him and stuff. Again, I can't comment on that because I didn't know the guy. So I don't know. If he would have come back now, I think he would do well. I think it would be, a lot of people would kind of look at it as kind of a big deal, but I think he would kind of settle in at a certain level, and that's kind of where he would be. He chose to leave. I think he was an EMT, or he went in to become an EMT. That might be what he's doing now. I don't know what he's up to these days, but I don't really see him doing much more than that. He could probably maybe have a Wolves reunion if he were to go back to Impact. He and Eddie Edwards. Domination Warrior, Dragon Chaser Kev, Frost. I see all you people in the chat chatting amongst yourselves. I love seeing it. We have our own little community here. We have our own little family here. So I hope you guys are having a good time and enjoying the stream so far. We are having a good time tonight. Just getting started, unless, of course, YouTube has other ideas for me. So far, so good. I'm very worried after what happened last night, but everything seems to be stable so far, so hopefully I won't have to start a second stream. Nathan Cania, here's to the 1 year I've been listening to your show, hearing your shows every week, and even your sporadic appearances on Wade Keller's shows have made my 2020 worthwhile. Thank you, Solomonster. Well, thank you, Nathan. I've appreciated your patronage. I've seen you send in questions, and holy shit, PB with the was that $130 I just saw? It disappeared off the screen. Was that $130 I just saw? Are you kidding me? I'm behind on the super chat. I'm going to get to you a little bit later. I'm going to drink to that, actually. I'm going to have some of this bubbly so it doesn't go to waste. Again, cheers to everybody. I know we have people still coming into the to the stream. I feel like I only drink champagne on New Year's. Maybe we should do a New Year's Eve stream. What do you guys think about that? I was thinking about maybe doing the next live mailbag on New Year's Eve. Do it at like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, so that way we get rid of this awful year, this godforsaken year, and we can ring in 2021, but that's up to you guys. If you think that's something that you would want to be part of, you guys can let me know. Let's move on to our next emailer. Naveen, or Naveen, in Los Angeles, California. What do you think of having a guest director for Raw once in a while? WWE would hand the Raw script over to a successful Hollywood director to see how they would produce an episode. This might give us fresh storytelling and presentation. Fresh presentation maybe, but I just don't see how that would work storyline-wise. I mean, how would that really work? WWE is Vince McMahon's vision. He's not going to bring in somebody with a different vision of how he sees his own product. I just don't think that kind of collaboration would work the way the WWE produces television. You're going to bring in somebody for 1 week who radically changes the way that the television show looks, or because again, a guest director is very different than a guest writer. They're not the same thing. So you would still need somebody to actually write the show. You would need them to write the episodes. So I mean, if you're suggesting that they rotate guest writers, then that just doesn't work. I'm not saying I don't think that they need that, but I just don't think that works. I think you need a consistent vision. And I also don't think the WWE writers would be all that thrilled, right? I mean, if you put yourself in their shoes and you're bringing in some kind of Hollywood hotshot who ends up doing a better job than they do, I don't know that we really... I just don't know that we really know how good or bad these WWE writers really are. I mean, forget Vince McMahon for a second, right? We keep hearing about this army of writers that they have. At any given moment, it's 20, 25, 30. They've had as many as 30 writers that they have employed at any one given time. I don't know that we really truly know how good or bad they really are, because they write for an audience of one. They're not writing because they think, oh, Solomonster, he likes this, or the fans are going to like that. They're writing for their boss. They're writing for Vince McMahon and what they think is going to make him laugh and what they think is going to pop him and what they think he's not going to tear up and throw in the garbage can when they come to work the next day. So, you know, I feel bad for them. It's not probably a very fun situation for them to be in. But they're the ones who signed up for it. That's why I always laugh when people go, hey, Solomonster, there's been a writing opening at WWE. You should apply. I'm like, what? Why do you? Well, you hate me? You hate me that much? Why would you even suggest something like that? What makes you think I would even want to be in that kind of position? With all the horror stories that have come out from people who have worked there in that position. Why do you hate me? Such a silly question. This next question comes from Mike in Portland, Maine. It's been well documented that Kurt Angle was disgusted by and refused to be shown on the ECW show with the infamous Sandman crucifixion. Yet he started working for WWE not long after The Undertaker did the same thing to Steve Austin. Has Kurt ever mentioned those incidents, and are there any moments in wrestling that almost made you stop watching altogether? Kurt has talked about this multiple times in interviews over the years. He talked about it on the Rise and Fall, in fact, of ECW DVD, which a great DVD that came out many years ago. But he's done shoot interviews and stuff where he's talked about that as well. And they showed, on that DVD, by the way, they showed footage of the incident. So the story there is Kurt was invited to an ECW show. This is the original ECW. He was invited to a show by Shane Douglas as the story. I haven't heard Shane Douglas talk about this, so I'm just going by what Kurt has said. And Shane got his number and he called him and he introduced, hey, you know, my name is Shane Douglas. We've never met before, but we come from the same town of Pittsburgh. And he was apparently selling ECW to Kurt as if and Kurt was thinking it was some kind of like amateur wrestling thing. He didn't know what ECW was. He didn't know what ECW stood for. So he felt a little misled. And he went to the show, and you can only imagine. I mean, think if you're Kurt Angle, right? You're an Olympic gold medal wrestler. You think you're being invited to some kind of amateur league of some kind or amateur show. And you go, and not only is it professional wrestling, but it is the most violent, batshit crazy version of pro wrestling that you can think of. And people are using chairs and barbed wire and kendo sticks and staple guns and all sorts of weapons. And anyway, he learned real fast that it wasn't amateur wrestling. But then they did the angle with Raven. Raven was having Blue Meanie and Stevie Richards tie Sandman to a wooden cross. His arms were spread out like Jesus Christ. And, you know, it was a crucifixion angle. There's a reason why it goes down as being this infamous angle that ECW did. And he was furious. And Joey Styles was there, and Joey Styles said that Kurt was fuming, and he was threatening, I'm going to sue you if you put this show on TV, and I'm, you know, because they had introduced him in front of the audience earlier in the night. You put that show on TV with me on it, I'm going to sue you, you're going to hear from my lawyers. So, yeah, Kurt wasn't very happy about that. I don't know how devout Kurt is as far as how offended he was, but clearly he was bothered by it. Kurt was already signed with WWE when they did the Undertaker crucifixion deal with Stone Cold in, what was it, late 98, right? It was still 98, I think, at that point that they did that angle. It was on Monday Night Raw. Kurt had signed a contract. If it was 98, Kurt had signed a contract a few months earlier. Kurt signed his contract in the summer of 1998. So Kurt Angle was already working for the company at that time. You know, they already had him under contract. But he just hadn't debuted on television yet. So I guess as long as he wasn't on the same show where that angle was shot, then it probably didn't matter to him. As far as like moments that almost got me to stop watching wrestling, I can't think of their, you know, honestly, the closest I've ever come to really just giving up because out of boredom was early 1995. Early 1995, I just almost completely gave up. That almost broke me. I mean, Raw now is as bad as it's ever been, or pretty damn close. And the pandemic is only part of it. Not having people in the building, it sucks. But when you have a show that isn't great to begin with, and then you put it in front of a bunch of virtual screens, they're trying to make the best of a bad situation. I'd rather have the Thunderdome than have a dead silent empty building, but this is as bad as it's ever been. I mean, it is just a chore to sit through a show that I genuinely keep hoping and wanting to get better and wanting to improve, and it just never happens. It just never happens. I feel like an insane person where you just keep hoping something's going to happen, and you keep convincing yourself that eventually things have got to turn around, right? We're scraping the bottom of the barrel. There's only one way to go. You can only go up. And then somehow they dig a little bit deeper. They find another hole, and they dig a little bit deeper. But Raw breaks me every week. Raw just... I spend the rest of the week from Tuesday to Sunday putting the pieces back together, and then on Monday they just break me all over again. And I spend the next week putting all the pieces back together. That's the way I would describe Monday Night Raw. Dried chicken without flavor. Should Jay White win both IWGP Intercontinental and IWGP Heavyweight title at Wrestle Kingdom? No. Kota Ibushi should win both belts at Wrestle Kingdom, and then they should get the Intercontinental off of him. I don't like this double champion stuff. I don't like that. Jay White would be, I think, a great IWGP Intercontinental champion. I want Kota Ibushi as the IWGP champion. You can have Jay White win the IC, vacate it, do some kind of tournament or something. New Japan does great with these tournaments. I'm kind of sick of this whole double champion thing. In WWE, I'm sick of it, and I'm getting sick of it in New Japan. Ray Wrighton. What's going on, Ray? I miss Ray. I used to see Ray at my meetups, and now there's no meetups anymore. We can't have meetups. I may not be able to have meetups for a couple more years at this point. Happy Sound Off anniversary, my love. Oh, be still my heart. Here's to 13 more years, and I will be here every step of the way. I will drink to that. It's not fizzy anymore. All the fizz is gone. Chris Jericho, what happened to all the fizz? Jacob Donnelly, happy 13th anniversary. Hope you have 13 more. Wow. 26 years of the Sound Off. You're really pushing it now. 13 more years of Monday Night Raw. I don't know about that. Jackalope. There's Jackalope. Thank you, Jackalope. Again, this is from Jackalope. Well, you can't see it here. I'm in the... There we go. I got your gift, Jackalope. It came in one piece, so thank you for that. There were two of them. There were actually two of them. So, thank you. Eddie Cheds. If the rumors are to be believed that at WrestleMania 22, Eddie Guerrero against Shawn Michaels would have taken place, how would you have booked the build, the story, and the match? Well, I don't think I could sit here and come up with the entire build here on the spot like this, but who would I put over in a match like that? I think Shawn probably would have gone over. I think I would have put Shawn over. I think it would have been a very good match. I don't think the kind of match that Shawn Michaels and Eddie Guerrero would have had in 2006, it would have been anywhere near the kind of match that the two of them would have had if it was, let's say, 2003 or 2002, because Eddie physically just wasn't the same guy. He was limited at that point. He was hurting. I think I get the impression that he was very upset with how his match went with Benoit at the One Night Stand show that they did, the ECW One Night Stand show. That match was not, I think, on par with what people were hoping and expecting it to be. But the two of them had a kick-ass match. I think it was Vengeance 2003 for the U.S. title. So as the years went on, Eddie's body just started to really fail him. And I don't think he and Shawn Michaels would have been capable of having a bad match, but I also don't think the match they would have had would have been this amazing, stupendous, incredible match that it would have been if it was done, I don't know, three or 4 years earlier. But I think Shawn would have gone over in that match had they done it. Rudy with the $5. Thank you, Rudy. Jackalope again. I got here late. Well, you're here now. You're here now. That's all that matters. Smooches. You're the podcast OG. Happy 13th. Rudy again. Who is a deceased wrestler that you wish had a podcast? Wow. That's a loaded question. Deceased wrestler who I wish had a podcast. Brian Pillman. Brian Pillman. I think that would have been a must listen. Brian Pillman. And for some reason, I feel like Yokozuna was like a really kind of chill guy. I feel like Yokozuna would have been he would have had some stories to tell. But I think Brian Pillman's the first name that comes to mind. Oh, and I'll give you one more. Bobby Heenan. I think Bobby Heenan he would have had some incredible stories. I think his humor and his wit, the way that Jim Cornette has, like Brian Last, kind of co-hosting the podcast with him. You give somebody with Bobby and give Bobby his own show, and I think that would have been amazing. A. Lavelle with the $50 super chat. Holy shit. Thank you, A. Lavelle. Thank you, my man. That is really awesome. I'm so glad you can join us here tonight. Nate. Let's do 13 more. And then from here, he says, is another Vinceism. And then from here, yeah, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. You can throw some more in the chat. I'm sure I'm not thinking of all the different Vince McMahon phrases. Adrian Moore discovered this podcast when I was frustrated with 2015 Raw and how little things meant. Thank you for being able to point out the BS. That's what I try to do every week. You would be amazed at some of the emails I get from people. Oh, you're too negative. Why don't you just focus on the positives? You could say that about any show. Let's just ignore all the bad stuff and pretend that none of it happens. And we'll just focus on like the 2 good things or the 3 good things that we can find on the show. I don't think some people really understand how podcasting works. Like they try to explain to me how podcasting works and I just laugh. I always find it very humorous. Maybe that's how your podcast works. Go start a podcast. Anybody can start a podcast. I did a whole mailbag segment for people who want advice on, if you're starting out doing a podcast. I don't remember the episode number offhand, but go buy a microphone and plug it into your computer and have a podcast if you're not happy with the selection that's out there. There's a reason when I was reviewing Raw many years ago, I started doing the good, the bad, and the ugly. Because you're going to have good stuff, you're going to have bad stuff, and you're going to have ugly stuff. And if you're too oversensitive to hear the negative stuff, then guess what? You can get the fuck on out of here. There's a lot of other shows out there that I'm sure you would love. Who love licking boots. We don't lick boots here. But not you. That's not addressed to you. You just got me, you got me a little amped up there. Let's see here. Achilles 311, please give a shout out to your biggest fan, Mike from Maine. Well, Mike from Maine, thank you for being a fan. Thank you very much. And Jamie Dorsch. Jamie Dorsch dropping $107. That's a very weird amount, but thank you. 107.62. That is a very bizarre amount. Congrats on 13 years. Been listening since the Michael Jackson rant. That was episode 75. Quick question. What is the worst job Undertaker ever did? I'll tell you right now. The worst job that the Undertaker ever did, as far as a job that he never should have done, was to Vladimir Kozlov on SmackDown. I remember watching that. It came out of nowhere. It was clear they were trying to build Kozlov up. Undertaker never should have lost to Vladimir Kozlov. That was bullshit. And I'm sure there's been a few others as well, but that's the one that really stands out to me. But holy shit, Jamie, wow. Thank you very much, Jay. I'm gonna pour one out for Jamie now. Wow. I didn't see that come in before. As we go along here and I see some of these super chats that came in that I didn't see when they popped up on screen, you may see me react. I gotta be careful here. I feel like I'm already halfway through this bottle. I gotta be careful. We got Sean Turner coming up. Yeah, tell Jericho, man, this is pretty good. Sean Turner, buy or sell, and then we'll get back to the email questions. Buy or sell. Willem Dafoe, Green Goblin, as Attitude Era Mr. McMahon, or Mr. McMahon as Willem Dafoe, Green Goblin. What would bring the most entertainment? Well, I mean, Mr. McMahon, probably Mr. McMahon. Well, I work for the guy, Vince McMahon. I'm going to call him Vin Man. You know why? Because I don't work for him, and I can call him that. Vin Man. I think Vin Man playing Green Goblin with a voice that sounds like he gargles concrete all day, I think that would have been pretty entertaining. I don't remember which question did we leave off with here? We did Naveen. Here we go. Here we go. Boy, I got a lot left. We better get going here. we better keep moving along here. All right, Brock. Not Lesnar, from Westminster, California. With WWE shutting down and controlling... with WWE shutting down or controlling the Twitch accounts for its talent, do you think that some of them might leave WWE for other promotions for that reason? Well, that is the million-dollar question. On the one hand, I don't know that any of them really have the guts to stand up to WWE when their contracts are up and say, you know what, this is wrong what you're doing. And I really enjoyed running my Twitch or doing Cameo or whatever it is that they're doing that WWE is now either taking away or managing for them and saying, you know what, I want my freedom. So piss off and I'm going to go work somewhere else. I would like to see some of them do that, just to kind of stick it to WWE. If enough of them actually did it, maybe real change would come about. But no, I don't think we're going to see very many people leaving for that reason. You might see one or two people but they're probably already unhappy for other reasons. But I honestly, I don't see anybody standing up and calling him out the way that Paige did. I give Paige credit. You know, she was very emotional about the whole thing, and she was very public about that in a way that nobody else was. And I applaud her for that. Whatever you think of Paige, did we hear that from anybody else publicly? Nope. And I don't think we're going to. If more people actually stood up and said something and said, look, what's going on here is just wrong. You know, and now we're hearing stories about WWE internally. It's almost like they're setting up some kind of internal agency where they, through this little internal department, they can manage things for the talent. I mean, that was probably the end goal all along. But once the talent starts getting paid, let's say they start doing Twitch again, but now WWE's taking a cut. I mean, it's up to the talent to let, if they want to go public with what their cut of it is, I guess. It's kind of a personal question, but I would be very curious exactly how much they would still be getting out of that if WWE was taking a cut. Twitch is taking a cut. How much is left for the wrestler? Why even do Twitch? Why even bother? If you were doing it to make a little bit of extra money on the side, then why even bother? Nathan from London. I wanted to ask your opinion on Jeff Jarrett. Global Force Gold Jeff. I believe he got unfair criticism during his career for not drawing a dime. I found him to be a really good heel and had great matches with wrestlers like Chris Benoit in WCW and AJ Styles in TNA. I understand he may have hogged the spotlight for a bit long in the early days of TNA, but he helped put them on the map. I know he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, but I feel most wrestling fans bash him around. So the line that you're thinking of when you mentioned the whole never drew a dime thing, what that comes from is a quote, and it might have been the rise and fall of WCW. DVD that WWE did. I think it might have been from there. But the quote was that Jeff Jarrett broke 6,000 guitars in his career, and he never drew a dime. And I will say, not to speak ill of the dead, because Mike Graham, he took his own life many years ago, but I am sure that Jeff Jarrett drew way more dimes than Mike Graham ever did. Even if you put a pen and paper in his hand, Jeff Jarrett probably drew more dimes than Mike Graham ever did. That being said, Jeff Jarrett, he was overpushed in WCW. He was very much overpushed, I felt, in TNA. Not to say he didn't have good matches or do some good stuff with Kurt Angle and people like that in TNA, but way overpushed. Way overpushed. I'm sure that he was a draw in his early days, his younger days in Memphis, and his slapnuts stuff in WCW, it got over. His slapnut stuff got over. He probably sold some t-shirts out of it, but Jeff Jarrett was not a main event headline attraction. He was not. Jeff Jarrett was not a headliner. He was not a main eventer. Never saw him as one. You know, he won the world title in WCW because he was buddy-buddy with Vince Russo. They were friendly from their days together in WWE. And Russo, I feel like, actually really did want to make an attempt to push some newer faces, some younger faces. So, you know, hats off to him, at least for that. But Jeff Jarrett was not the guy. That's why he became world champion in WCW. That's the only reason he became champion in WCW. In WWE, he was a solid upper mid-card heel. Intercontinental level. He was also a tag team champion. That was the level that I always saw Jeff Jarrett at. Good worker, mid-card, upper mid-card, but that was his ceiling for me. So he was world champ in WCW because he was friends with Russo. And look, Diamond Dallas Page was, you know, knocked by some people sometimes because he was very friendly with Eric Bischoff. Still is to this day. Eric Bischoff and DDP are still good friends. And DDP got a lot of criticism because, well, you're only getting pushed because you're friends with Eric. But to me, it's not the same thing. Because if you look at a guy like a DDP, you know, the difference is DDP got over. He got himself over with the audience. The fans genuinely would respond to this guy when he was out there, and he had a cool finish. It's like the RKO now, which is basically a takeoff on the Diamond Cutter. It is the Diamond Cutter. It's the Diamond Cutter with the 3 different initials. But when he would hit that move, he can hit it on anybody from any position, and the people would pop, and they would rise. And then he would go off into the crowd. That's why he called himself the People's Champ, and he wanted that program with The Rock when he came into WWE, whatever your opinion is on that. But the people would go crazy for DDP. Go back and watch the angle in WCW on Nitro when the NWO was trying to bring him in, and it looked like he was going to join, and then he gave, I think it was Scott Hall maybe, a Diamond Cutter. The people went nuts. They made DDP in one night. He went from here to here. I can't say that Jeff Jarrett, I never saw Jeff Jarrett get over to that degree on his own. So that would be the difference there, you know, as far as that goes. But as far as TNA, I mean, it's obvious, you know, he headlined in TNA because it was the company that he and his father founded. Simple as that. It was their company. So of course he was going to be pushed. And you know what? I understand him being pushed initially because he had a name. He had a name from WCW. He had a name from WWE. You're trying to start this new company. You have somebody like Jeff Jarrett. Absolutely. Absolutely. Go ahead and push him at first. Let him start wrestling guys like Samoa Joe and AJ Styles and Chris Daniels and help elevate those guys because those guys are going to be your future. But I also remember the days of all those overbooked, just mess of a main event they had on all those TNA pay-per-views with all the interference and the guitar shots. And it's like, oh my God, who cares? Overpushed. Overbooked in TNA. Not saying he didn't have any great matches, but was he a draw? Do I think he was a headliner? He was a level below that. As far as I'm concerned, he was a level below that. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. James Hollins. Is it sad or hilarious that Teddy Hart is the last remaining active wrestler of the Hart family? It's very sad. I get very sad every time I look at a picture of the Hart Foundation, and I realize that Bret is the last one alive. Owen's gone, Anvil's gone, Davy's gone, Pillman's gone. That to me is more depressing than anything else. Uffman Entertainment, buy or sell, King of the Ring 1993 or Royal Rumble 1992. Why would you do me like that? Why would you do, what are you doing? What are you doing to me? You know I'm not going to sell on either one of them. I'll tell you what, I'll pay 10 cents more for the 92 Rumble. I will pay slightly more for the Rumble than I will for King of the Ring, but I can't bring myself to sell on either one of those. JC Zephyr, happy 13th anniversary. Is there a wrestler that you would have loved to see face The Undertaker at WrestleMania that never got the opportunity to do so? Sting excluded. Well, you took my answer away. You took my answer away. A match that he never had at WrestleMania, I got to go with Kurt Angle. I think that match they had in 2006, that should have been the match of WrestleMania 22. Instead of Undertaker against Mark Henry, it should have been Undertaker against Kurt. That was a worthy match, I think, of being on the WrestleMania card that year, so that would be my answer. Jesse Jasso with the $15. Congrats on 13 years, Solomonster. What is your favorite Vince McMahon match? My favorite Vince McMahon... Magician Sapphire. You crazy SOB. Magician Sapphire just dropped $200 on the 13-year anniversary stream. Wow. For a second there, I was speechless. That's why I stopped. And then I realized dead air is a horrible thing to do on radio or in podcasting, so you better say something. Woo! Man. What was the question? I forgot the question now. I'm going to get back to you. Jesse wanted to know, okay, so what is your favorite Vince McMahon match? Wow. Oh boy. Favorite Vince McMahon match? He had some good ones. Vince actually did have some good matches. I thought the match with Hogan at WrestleMania 19 was way better than it had any right to be. I thought the match with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 22 was actually pretty good. But I don't know if that was his best. You know what match I probably had the most fun watching as far as Vince McMahon matches? It might have been the father-son match at WrestleMania 17. That was pure pro wrestling. With the Linda thing, she was comatose. She rises from the chair. The Astrodome explodes. She kicks him in the balls. I might have to go with Vince and Shane from WrestleMania X7. That might have been the most fun Vince McMahon match I've ever seen. Still reeling from that Magician Sapphire super chat here. A little bit of the bubbly. Cameron Johnson. How should Vince Russo be remembered? Well, he's a very complicated fellow. When I think of Vince Russo, I think of a guy who was part of one of the most fun eras in wrestling. I was a younger fan at the time, so I feel like at my age at that time, I came up at just the right time. I was right in that target demographic. Raw was like a party every single week. It really was. I could not wait for Raw to go on Monday nights back during that era. And I'm not just talking Attitude like 99. I'm talking like for a few years there, it was must-see appointment television if you were a wrestling fan. And I don't know that those days are ever going to come back, because the way they do the show now and the length of the show, I don't think it could ever go back to that under these conditions. But Vince Russo, you can't deny that he was part of that era, absolutely. And whether you want to say, well, it was, only because Vince McMahon was kind of filtering, who knows? But he was part of that era. And then I think what happened is when he left, he was exposed. He was exposed because he came from that whole mentality of Crash TV, throwing stuff at the wall in some cases and let's see what sticks, shock value, put the title on David Arquette, which actually I think was a Tony Schiavone suggestion, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about that, but it might have been something Tony actually suggested in a booking meeting. But he never, ever achieved the same level of success that he had in WWE. And in fact, he was responsible for a lot of really awful television in the years after he left WWE. So do you judge Vince Russo by the, let's say, 3 years of television that moved ratings up and swelled the audience? Or do you judge him by the next 15 years, which was for the most part, largely a failure? Are you only going to judge him by those 3 or 4 years as opposed to the next 10 or 15? So he was part of that era, and he had a certain reputation, and he left thinking, well, I'm going to be a big shot and leave, and I'm going to replicate that success in these other promotions in WCW and TNA, and he never did. So that's kind of how I look at Vince Russo. And by the way, I think Vince Russo, if his story is to be believed about why he left WWE, I think he was well within his rights to leave. You know, Vince McMahon was just piling the work on. Hey, now we have SmackDown, so you guys are going to have more work. And if your family wants you to have more time at home, well, then too bad, get a nanny. He's always told that story, and if that story is true, why would you want to work for someone like that? I've been very fortunate. The people that I've worked for are actually good human beings who actually do care about that sort of thing. I know not all bosses are like that, but, you know, I mean, imagine your boss saying something like that to you. So I don't blame him for leaving. Just to defend Russo there. Reese, 9984. Remember that Bret Hart promo after the Sid Cage match on Raw? That was gold. That 96-97 run was some of his best work. One of the all-time great moments in Raw history. I remember it like it was yesterday. I still have the VHS. It's got scan lines because I rewound it so many times. I love how now you can just bring up anything you want to on the network or on YouTube. Back then you had to rewind and fast forward, rewind, and then, you know, then you've had these weird lines, tracking lines on the tape. It was one of my favorite segments in Raw history. And the reason why we have a 7-second delay on the show now, thanks to Bret Hart. Let's get back to these email questions. We answered Brock, right? So now we come to our good old friend here, Abhinav, from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I have a buy, sell, and rent for you on the best heel in 2020. Roman Reigns, Switchblade Jay White, or Evil. Well, I'm going to sell on Evil. I am not sold on Evil in this heel run that he has had. I'm going to sell on Evil. I am going to rent on Roman Reigns, and I'll explain why in a second. And I'm going to buy on Switchblade Jay White. And I say that I'm not even the biggest Jay White fan, but I got to buy on Jay White. Like I said, Evil, this heel run, I'm not really sold on it. Roman Reigns has said, he's done interviews, and he has said, you know, everybody's talking about a heel turn. I'm a heel now. He goes, I'm not a heel. He goes, I don't consider myself to be a heel. I haven't done anything yet that makes me a heel. Now, I don't know that I necessarily buy that. I look at Roman Reigns and the way he's been acting. The guy's a fucking heel. He can say whatever he wants to say. Roman Reigns is a heel. But I do think that he really is only scratching the surface with what he can do, I think, in that role. And if you think about it, he really hasn't done anything like too dastardly yet. I mean, you know, some of the things that he's put his cousins through on TV, it's kind of fucked up. But he really hasn't done anything overly dastardly yet. And I think it's coming. I think it's only a matter of time. In fact, he had made the comment, I think that's what he's saving his new theme music for. He's got new theme music. He just hasn't debuted it yet. I think he's waiting to really kind of cement the heel turn. So we haven't even really seen the full heel version yet of Roman Reigns. He's only been doing this now for a few months. It's been 2 months, 3 months so far. That's really all that it's been. Jay White, though, is so hateable. Jay White has the kind of face, you just want to punch this guy square in the face. And to me, that's part of what makes a great heel, right? Not every heel is like that or is the chicken shit heel. But Jay White, he is just so punchable. You want to see this guy get his ass handed to him. He's a great heel. So ask me that question again in a year, though. Ask me that question again a year from now, and I think Roman might go from a rental to a buy. Josh in Texas. Great recommendation on the Edge documentary after his return. I missed the ruthless aggression era that really made him. Can you suggest 5 matches that turned Edge into a made man? So I jotted down a few things here that jumped to mind. Since we're limiting it to 5 here, I actually listed more than 5. But the things that I think about with Edge, the standout moments that really cemented him, either as a made man or a main eventer eventually. I always think of the spear to Jeff Hardy, TLC 2, WrestleMania X7. One of the most incredible spots in WrestleMania history. Edge climbs up this ridiculously tall ladder, and he speared this guy in midair. And you have this sea of fans in the Astrodome. Thank God it was a stadium show. All these fans in the background watching this. Jeff Hardy, I mean, it felt like time stood still. That's how long it took for him to finally come crashing down to the mat. And that was in 2001. Think of all the bumps he's taken over the years. It's amazing he's not crippled up in a wheelchair. It is a miracle of science that this guy is still an active wrestler full-time on TV. But that's an amazing, that's a highlight reel spot that I'll never forget. And by the way, go back and take a look at the look on the security dude's face in the front row. When he sees Edge climbing up right before the spear, and then when he spears him, it's like the security guy who's got his back turned, but he has to turn around to see what's going on. The look on his face, I'll never forget that. The look on his face was just priceless. The Edge-Kurt Angle feud, the hair match at Judgment Day 2002, excellent match. They had a match at Backlash the month before that was very good. I thought the hair match was even better. And I think that really was the first time that I think Edge had a match with an existing main eventer and killed it. And you saw the potential in him as being someone who could one day be in the spot that Kurt was in. I think of that hair match where Kurt lost his hair. The first Money in the Bank match, obviously, at WrestleMania 21. That's what launched him and ultimately got him his first championship. How could you not mention the first Money in the Bank from WrestleMania 21? Edge and Mick Foley at WrestleMania 22. Edge had something to prove in that match. Edge was very upset that they took the world title off of him 3 weeks after he won it. Ratings spiked. When Edge beat John Cena and became the champion early in 2006, the ratings for Raw actually went up. But they put the belt right back on John Cena at the Royal Rumble. Instead of saying, hey, this guy's getting over, why don't we call an audible and we'll do Cena getting the belt back from Edge at WrestleMania 22. They didn't do that. So Edge went into that show with a chip on his shoulder thinking, man, fuck these guys. I'm going to prove to them, that I belong in this spot. And he hung with Mick Foley in Foley's type of match and the flaming table spot and everything they did in that match. That is another one of those matches like the Kurt match that I think really cemented him. And then Edge and Undertaker, WrestleMania 24. Edge's first and only WrestleMania main event. And they had a very good match. So that would be my top 5 of what I think of. And just to add more to it here, Edge and Rey Mysterio against Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit, the tag team title match they had at No Mercy in 2002, is one of the great tag team matches in company history. And maybe the greatest match or tag team match that Edge was ever a part of. I wouldn't say that match turned him into a main event guy, but I just think it's such a great match that it deserves more acclaim than it gets, in part because of who was involved. So obviously it doesn't get talked about as much. And also, I got to give a shout out here to Edge and Ric Flair. They had that TLC match on Raw in 2006 in that very brief period where Edge was the champion before they took the belt away from him. Ric Flair was 57, I think, 57 or 58 years old at that point. And his best days in the ring were long behind him. But he went out there with Edge. And Edge bumped for him, and they worked the kind of match that they worked. It was so great And you thought Flair really had a shot at winning the championship in that match. You got to give Edge a lot of credit for that match. And I think working with Flair, protecting Flair, and the match coming off as well as it did, I think was just another kind of confidence boost, saying, hey, we can trust this guy to go in there and have, even with a guy like Ric Flair, who's very limited in what he can do at this point, this guy can go in there and be trusted to have that kind of match. So that's my Edge list. Pretty sure Flair was 57 or 58 at that point. Tenorio128 with the $10 super chat drop. With names like Chris Jericho, Kurt Angle, really? Chris Jericho, Kurt Angle, and Kane, would you put William Regal in the conversation of being a good, serious wrestler and good comedy wrestler? Oh, without question, absolutely. Without a doubt. Regal is one of the best. Regal has some of the best facial expressions. He could tell a story just with his face. The guy is hilarious. He's awesome. He'll be in the Hall of Fame in the next few years. Theo Johnson, do you think WWE will do the Street Profits against the Usos and Drew McIntyre against Sheamus at WrestleMania 37? Maybe they could do McIntyre and Sheamus. They got to do McIntyre and Sheamus at some point. It's a natural match. And I actually like the interactions they've had on TV. I just don't know if they see Drew and Sheamus as being a WrestleMania-worthy title match. I don't know if I see it either. I was kind of thinking maybe they would do it at the Rumble if Drew gets the belt back before then. But yeah, I would think it has to be under consideration. Street Profits and Usos. I care so little about the tag team divisions in this company right now that I couldn't possibly care any less. I'm just going to be honest. I really don't care. Until they do a better job of getting me to care about these tag team matches, to me, they could just put any match out there in the tag division at WrestleMania. To me, it's absolutely not going to sell the show at all. Domination Warrior, congrats on 13 years. Your content is always a great listen. Thank you. Which promo battle would you like to see? Eddie Kingston versus Pat McAfee or MJF against Eli Drake? Also, I miss Lucha Underground, Dario Cueto, and Tim Storm. I do too. Tim Storm was one of the great pleasures of NWA Power. Tim Storm and Mama Storm. As far as the promo battle I would like to see more, I got to go with Eddie Kingston and Pat McAfee. I think that would be awesome. ATM. If Scott Hall would have been penciled in for a WWE championship run, who would have taken it from him? Or rather, I'm sorry, who would he have taken it from? You can't choose the Click or Bret Hart. Well, you're taking all my options away from me. You took away Bret Hart. You took away the Click. Who would he have taken it from? It really depends on the year. Came in 92. He left in 96. And I think all of the champions during that period were either Bret Hart or the Click. You just took them all away from me. We had Bret as the champion, Shawn as the champion, Diesel as the champion. Who else? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of who else would have been. I don't know, honestly. I don't think it would have been Undertaker. Boy, it really did. I love that super chat. I love that super. I bet most people don't even know who I'm talking about. That was just me being mean that day. I can't look at that super chat without laughing. Oh my goodness. You want to get some music on in here? Let's try that. If you guys don't like the music, I'll ditch it. It's on very low. It's on very low. Just to have some background. If you want me to turn it off, let me know. I'll turn it off. Let's go to Leonard and McCormick. Bash at the Beach was in July of 1996. I think you just admitted that you went to summer school. Well, not exactly. I didn't go to summer school, but so maybe it wasn't school. Because it definitely was that week. Maybe it was the camp counselor, because I was a camp. Maybe it had something to do with like the camp counselors or something. I just know that week it was a big topic of conversation. But I definitely did not go to summer school. I never went to summer school. I know that. I would definitely remember that. Jay Beanie with the $5. The Solomonster never sleeps. Congratulations on 13 years. If Ken Shamrock returned in the early 2000s, how and would you have booked his WWE return? Well, he had a ready-made feud with Kurt Angle. I mean, my God, the Battle of the Ankle Locks? That was a natural. That's the first feud I would have built to for him. In fact, I probably would have brought him in to either attack Kurt or confront him. And I would have built that up like a serious match, not a real fight, but I would have built it up almost like a sports-like presentation. I think Kurt Angle, who at that point was a machine. I mean, if Shamrock would have come back in 2002, 2003, but more so 2002. 2002, Kurt Angle was a maniac. And physically, he may have been in the best shape that he was in that whole run. So, Kurt Angle and Ken Shamrock, I think, would have been a hell of a match. King Bling with the $2. Favorite wrestling story that you covered over 13 years? Oh, my goodness. Put me on the spot. I don't know. I've covered a lot of fun stories before. I remember laughing like a madman. I mean, it's almost like I had laughing gas. I was talking about Scott Steiner. And something that Scott Steiner, a comment that he had made about Stephanie McMahon, I think, or the WWE Hall of Fame. Oh, I know what it was. He was talking about the WWE Hall of Fame. I think somebody asked him, would you accept an induction? And basically his answer was no, but it was a lot more colorful than that. But he was talking about how there's no physical Hall of Fame. And it was something like, it could be on the moon or something. I don't remember. But all I know is, I have it in my notes. So if I ever do like a montage or something, I know which episode to go back. I don't have it in front of me, but I laughed my ass off. I couldn't stop laughing. I was in tears. Favorite wrestling story, though? I'd have to think about that. Hugh Jazz, if Kane debuted now, would he be as popular as The Fiend? If Kane debuted now, they would fuck him up. And it wouldn't be the same. Hangman Charlie, you're the reason I started a YouTube channel. Thank you. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I hear from a lot of people who say they started podcasting and streaming because of my show and other people. No, it's not just me, but other people's shows inspired them in some way. I think that's great. It's the next generation of podcasters. All right, let's go to the next. Oh, I think the music got turned though. Let's put the music on. Nah, we'll leave the music off. Because then I got to import the music into each one of these questions. I'm not going to do that. Let's go. We did Josh already, right? There we go. Tori. Not to be confused with Tombstone Tori from DX. Tori from Atlanta, GA. What do you think the legacies will be for Sheamus, Dolph Ziggler, and R-Truth when all is said and done? I think Sheamus is going to go down as one of the most celebrated, decorated WWE stars in the history of the company. The guy has won almost every championship there is to win. I don't think he's won the Universal. I know he wants to win the Intercontinental, and now he may not because he's not on SmackDown anymore. But when he came back, that was, he was on the bump. And he said, I really want to win the Intercontinental title because it's the last thing I haven't really won. I love how he just completely neglects the Universal title. He doesn't care about the Universal title. He just wants the IC title. But he's won every title there is to hold except that one. He's been the World Heavyweight Champion. He's been the WWE Champion. He's been the US Champion. He's been a Tag Team Champion. He's won the King of the Ring. He's won the Royal Rumble. There isn't much left for him to do. So he's going to go down. And it's not just about, championships that you're handed. But what it illustrates is that he's really been in the mix for most of his career. In fact, it wasn't long after he debuted on the main roster that he beat John Cena in that tables match to win his first title. That was in 2009. So I think when he's finally done, Sheamus is going to end up being, I got a question from Brendan asking me if I think Sheamus is a Hall of Famer. Of course. Of course. All three of these guys are going into the Hall of Fame. Sheamus is going in. Dolph Ziggler is going in. R-Truth is going in. But does Sheamus belong in the Hall of Fame? Absolutely. You look at his body of work, of course. And honestly, he can work pretty snug. I actually think a guy like Sheamus, like as a brawler, I think he would have fit in perfectly fine in another era, like in the Mid-South era. I think he would have fit in well. He's got that unique look, his pale, pasty white skin. He stands out more than most. Dolph Ziggler, I think, is, obviously, he's a really good worker who made the mistake of being too good at bumping around and making other people look good. He ended up doing so, I think, at his own peril. I think he did so at his own expense. And also, I think of wasted potential as somebody who could have been higher on the card. I mean, I probably couldn't even tell you with all the fingers on one hand how many times over the years you could have been like, okay, this is it. This is the moment that Dolph Ziggler, like, he's going to be put over the top here. Here's where he becomes a real main event attraction. And they never pulled the trigger. Or he got hurt at the wrong time. He got concussed, whatever it was. A lot of missed opportunities over the years with Dolph Ziggler. And now, for me anyway, that window has closed. But I actually think he was a little too good for his own good. R-Truth is going to go down as one of the most, just based on everything everybody says about him, he is going to go down as one of the most beloved guys in the business. Just listen to what everybody who he's ever worked with has said about him. He is the most well-liked guy, the most respected guy. He can do whatever is asked of him. You want him to be serious, he can be serious. You want him to do comedy, he can do comedy. Now, I'm completely sick of the 24/7 stuff. I have absolutely no use for the 24/7 stuff. I think it's awful. I think it's lazy at this point. I don't put that on R-Truth. He does the best with what's given to him. R-Truth is very entertaining. He's very good at what he does. But even R-Truth cannot save awful material from WWE. Even he has his limits. He tries, but even he has his limits. But you want him to do comedy, he can do comedy better than anybody else. I mean, look, he got Brock Lesnar to crack up on live TV. That's not an easy thing to do. He got Brock Lesnar to crack. I'm still waiting on that pilot. They should film some kind of pilot for like a sitcom or something on the network with Brock Lesnar and R-Truth. Brock Lesnar told R-Truth. R-Truth said, Brock told him at the time, he told somebody in the back, I want to work with this guy. I want to do something with this guy. And then they never worked together. Come on, WWE. I know there are people in the company who watch this stuff. You got to get these two together. I don't know what Brock is up to these days. I saw he grew out like a weird beard now. He looks like a mountain man. You got to get R-Truth together with Brock Lesnar. Brock wants to do it. R-Truth, I'm sure, would love to do it. Let's make it happen. I don't know what. Let's make it happen. That would be must-see TV. Umar from Sheffield, England. Would you say that 2001 was the best year of Stone Cold Steve Austin's career in terms of ring work and matches, as he had some excellent matches against The Rock, Triple H, and Kurt Angle? Do you agree or disagree? In terms of the matches he had, yes. In terms of the matches he had, 2001 was Austin's best year. 2001 Royal Rumble match was great that he won. 3 Stages of Hell with Triple H at No Way Out. Excellent match. The second WrestleMania match with The Rock. Some people maybe even in the chat right now, would say that that's the best WrestleMania match of all time. It isn't for me, but it's up there. I think you give it another 20, 30 years, we look back on some of those WrestleManias from, earlier this century, and that's gonna, for a lot of fans, that's going to almost be like their version of Hogan Andre. This like larger than life match between two of the biggest stars in the history of the business. It's an excellent match. So that was, an iconic match. But he also had the matches with Kurt Angle that he had later on. And don't forget the matches he had also with Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit. Austin had some great battles with them as well. The two-man power trip against Jericho and Benoit on Raw in May of 2001 for the tag team titles. One of the greatest matches in the history of Raw that no longer exists, sadly, for obvious reasons. But I think Steve Austin was far better in the ring. I know Steve Austin was better in the ring before he broke his neck or injured his neck. Go back and watch his matches as Stunning Steve in WCW. Go back and watch the WWE matches he had in 1996 and 1997, and the way he was moving and the way he was bumping. He was almost like a completely different wrestler. He had to adapt. He had to adapt to become more of a brawler, which was fine. You know, he obviously, it worked out well for him. He adapted quite well, but he was a very, very different worker. His matches were very different after the neck injury than they were before. Pre-neck injury, he was a much more dynamic performer. I think those in the ring physically, those were his best days. Let's catch up on the super chat. Look at that, Cameron Grimes. There's the Cameron Grimes super chat. That one, by the way, does not have a dedicated dollar amount. That's one of the randos that pops up. But for those who are interested, if you want to send a super chat in, there are special donation amounts down below in the description. So if you want to pick out a particular one or a funny one, I'm just letting you know they are down there for those who are interested. Chase Wood, if Kenny Omega were to win on December 2nd, who should be his challenger at Revolution? Yeah, we now know that the date of the AEW title match is going to be December 2nd, live on Dynamite. It's going to be Kenny Omega taking on Jon Moxley. I believe we're probably going to get a title change there. I think Moxley is probably going to Japan to defend the U.S. title at Wrestle Kingdom, and that might be why they're going to take the title off of him then. And if that's the case, I think his challenger at Revolution is probably Jon Moxley. I think you can get a rematch out of it, maybe with a stipulation. But I think it probably is going to be Jon Moxley again. PB with the... Okay, that's the one. I think that's the one that I mentioned earlier. PB with the $130 super chat drop from what feels like an hour ago. Thank you. I don't know what else to say to that. That was unbelievable. Wow. That is not the biggest, but that is one of the biggest super chats I've ever gotten. So PB, thank you very much. You will now go into the annals of our 13-year anniversary stream forever. Nobody can ever take that away from you. He goes, congrats. If offered the opportunity to be a writer, booker, or a color commentator for WWE, would you take it? I don't have any interest in being a writer for WWE. I don't have any interest in being a booker for WWE. A commentary position, I don't see it. I just don't see it. Would I be open to it? Honestly, it's. I mean, you could say about any job if the pay were right. I mean, if it was an amazing offer that I thought, okay, that sounds like it could be fun. I'm not going to say I just say no outright, but I can't tell you that it's something I'm really interested in. So I guess my answer would be probably not. But the first two, I just don't have any interest at all. And you got to remember also, I mean, yeah, I've written, but not professionally. I mean, they're looking for people who have writing backgrounds in the television industry. I mean, go ahead and read one of these LinkedIn posts when a writing position opens up. I mean, they're looking for people who have X number of years of experience writing in television, reality television, or in sports. So there are people who are far more qualified for the position. I would feel foolish even applying for something like that because it's not what I do. Yeah, there are people who have gone to school for that. There are people who have worked in that industry before. I haven't. So it really is no business of mine to even be applying for a position like that. But no, I don't have any interest in that. I think I made that clear earlier when somebody asked me a similar question. Young Bibby. Buy or sell on the better wrestler, Kenzo Suzuki or Sean Stasiak? Been a while since I've seen either one of them. So I don't really feel strongly about either guy. I'll go with Stasiak because I saw more of his work. I'll buy on him. ATM. Been listening for 10 years. Nova Scotia, Canada. Can you shout out my new podcast, Good Times with Bad Movies, on all platforms? Well, there you go. You just heard it here. Good Times with Bad Movies on all major podcast platforms. Keep up the good work. The Mountie bit you did about mounting a while back is gold. I've had so many fun bits on the show. When you do 677 episodes, though, you kind of forget some of the stuff that you did. I mean, I track a lot of the intros and stuff like that. I have a list, but I can't track everything. So I rely on you guys to track some of it for me, so you can remind me about some of this stuff. Rodimus Prime with the $20. Happy anniversary, Solomonster. Rodimus, I see you in the chat quite often, and I really appreciate you being part of our little community here. And everybody in the chat right now here, joining live on a Thursday night. I figured this was a safer night because there's no wrestling going on tonight. I don't think there's a whole lot of stuff going on. It's kind of quiet, so that's why we're doing this on a Thursday. Food Hive. Just had to stop by and say congratulations. Your podcast brought me a lot of joy for the last 5 years, and praying for many more. Lou Thompson. Happy $13 for the 13th anniversary. Thank you. And Surreal469 with the 20. Belt fan here. This is Belt fan. First off, congrats on 13 amazing years, and thanks for the content. My question, how do I get ears to my fledgling podcast? I mentioned a little bit earlier that there was a mailbag question I had answered on one of the episodes. I don't remember which one it was. It was episode 5 something. If you email me, I can probably get you the episode number, where I talk about just advice for, just as somebody who has been podcasting for a while, advice for aspiring podcasters as far as how to get an audience. Honestly, I think YouTube is a useful tool, more so even than like an audio platform, like a Spreaker or an iTunes or something like that, just because YouTube is very searchable. And when a show is over, there's a lot of people who will go on YouTube and use the search function to search wrestling videos, wrestling recaps, wrestling reviews or whatever. And you might be able to get more eyeballs on your show that way. But I wouldn't limit yourself to just one platform. Get on as many as you can. It's easier now. It was very hard to get on some of these platforms when I was just starting out. Now it's a lot easier, as far as Spotify and Google Podcasts and things of that nature. So I would just get on as many as I can. You can use social media, certainly, but you use YouTube, because YouTube has just a huge audience of people who are just hungry for content. And then it gets into learning how to tag your videos and using certain keywords and stuff like that. And just keep grinding it. I always tell people, if you put a good podcast out, if you have a good voice, if you put the work in and you do your homework and you're very organized and you're not kind of scattershot and all over the place, you'll do well. It may take some time, but you'll do well. That's really the best advice I think that I can give. It's kind of how I did it. Dried chicken. Did you like the McMahonism storyline in 2006? I thought it was a little funny, but I wasn't really a huge fan of it. EJ, have you seen ESPN's The Last Dance about Michael Jordan? If so, buy or sell on The Last Dance or Undertaker's Last Ride? My brother watched it. I have not seen The Last Dance. I did see The Last Ride, though, and I thought it was excellent. But I can't really judge the two because I didn't see the Jordan one yet. I think it's 10 parts, right? I think. Are we up to... I went a little far ahead here. Here we go. Davey. Let's try to get the rest of these email questions in, and then we'll tackle all the super chats. Davey from Virginia Beach, Virginia. If not for Steve Austin's heel turn or the demise of WCW, when and how do you think the Attitude Era would have ended? That is an interesting question. When and how do I think the Attitude Era would have ended? Well, if not for that, I think it would have been Stone Cold's retirement. When he had to retire because of the neck and he had to step away, I think that would have marked the unofficial end of Attitude. For me, anyway. I mean, if I had to pick just one person who I associate with the Attitude Era, because you could say The Rock, you could say Mr. McMahon, you could say Mankind. The one person above all else who I associate with the Attitude Era and I think most of you would agree, is Stone Cold Steve Austin. When Stone Cold retires and goes away, the Attitude Era dies with him. Simple as that. And with or without his heel turn, I mean, he was on borrowed time with his neck anyway. But, I mean, had he not aligned with Vince, that would have been it. By the time he stepped away because of the neck, that would have been the end. That and Vince McMahon's speech about ruthless aggression and the debut of John Cena. That was another turning point. The ruthless aggression speech on Raw and then Cena showing up on SmackDown and saying ruthless aggression and going after Kurt, that felt like the beginning of the next era of WWE. Or at least looking back. I don't know if at the time I felt that way, but looking back on it, that's really what it was. It was the beginning of that next era. Because what do you call, was there an era between Attitude and ruthless aggression? I don't think so. But if you believe, as I do, that the Attitude Era died when Stone Cold shook hands with Vince, well then, I guess you would call it the Invasion Era, right? I mean, what do you call that era between ruthless aggression and the end of Attitude? Is there a common name that people give it? I would call that the Invasion period. But the Invasion ended in November of 2001. What about December until the following June? What do you call that? I feel like everybody has their own names and titles for these different periods in company history. Funny enough, at the same time that Vince McMahon started to talk about ruthless aggression on TV and Cena debuted, do you remember who WWE rehired? You might not, because if you blink, you would have missed it. But at the same time they were pushing forward with that new era in WWE, the company rehired Vince Russo. Now, he only worked there for maybe a day. I literally think it might have been a day. Maybe 2 days. And then they realized that they probably made a terrible mistake. So it is kind of poetic, though, that here they are. Here's this company transitioning to this new period, right? Moving away from Attitude, and they're looking to push new people, and it's just the dawning of a new era. And they were so desperate. They were desperate enough to bring back Vince Russo, the architect of the Attitude Era, because they were worried about their audience, which was eroding. And they were trying different things, and I guess they felt it wasn't working, and what do? Well, let's bring back Vince Russo. And then they thought better of it, I guess. But I guess they weren't ready to let go of Attitude just yet. The fact they wanted to bring him back. Craig from Manchester, if Steve Austin's biggest regret is walking out on the company, what do you think is Vince McMahon's biggest regret? And who is your favorite Attitude Era mid-carder? Well, I'll give you two. As far as what I think is Vince McMahon's biggest regret, I'll give you one personal and one professional. And I don't know Vince McMahon personally. I met him once when I was very young. That's my face-to-face exposure with Vince McMahon. You've probably seen the photo. I've shared it on social media. I met him in 1994. So these are just my opinions, but Vince already hinted that one of his greatest regrets, and he mentioned this in the Playboy interview that he did 20 years ago. He did an interview in 2001 with Playboy magazine. 2001 or 2000? Maybe it was 2000 or 2001 with Playboy. He regrets that his stepfather died before he had a chance to kill him. So that is one of Vince McMahon's great regrets of his life, that his stepfather passed away before Vince had a chance to murder him. So that's kind of a sign there of the kind of childhood that he obviously had. He talked in that interview about he and his mother lived in a trailer park when he was very young, and his mother, I think, may have married a few different people. He had a few different stepfathers. This particular stepfather was abusive to his mother. He was abusive to Vince. This is all according to Vince. And so he obviously didn't have a lot of happy thoughts about this particular stepfather. So that sounds like one of his great regrets. Business-wise, I don't think if you asked him that he would consider something like the WBF or, the XFL, even though they were giant failures, or at least the XFL the first time was a colossal failure. I don't think if you asked him, he would consider those failures. I think he's the kind of guy who would say, no, I took a chance. You know, I'm a risk taker and I take chances. So I don't know that he would really regret that. He probably regrets all of his money that was spent on his wife's 2 Senate campaigns that to the tune of $100 million that kind of flew away. He probably regrets that. But I tell you what, I think his biggest professional regret might be, just my opinion, and if it isn't, it should be. I think that he may have inadvertently saved UFC. And you may know this story already, but Vince McMahon may have unwittingly saved UFC from going under back in 2005. If you remember back then, Raw was on Spike TV. And they were actually, I think later that year, they were going back to USA. But at the time, they were on Spike. And I guess Vince McMahon and the company had a say in what programming went on after Raw. So when Raw would go off the air at 11 o'clock, whatever Spike was thinking about putting on at that time slot, I guess they would have to run it by the company. And if the company said, okay, then it was okay to go ahead and air it. UFC at the time was in deep trouble. I mean, they were in trouble. And they probably weren't too far away from going under. And they had this idea for a reality show called The Ultimate Fighter. And they shopped The Ultimate Fighter around to a whole bunch of different networks, and a whole bunch of different networks passed on it. Nobody wanted it. It's UFC. It's too violent. It's too controversial. And then Spike TV was interested. Right? They were rebranding as the network for men. They were interested in having UFC content, but they had to run it by Vince because Vince had the right of refusal, but they wanted to run this at 11 o'clock when Raw would go off the air. All Vince McMahon had to say was no, and that would have been it. Either Spike would have just said, we can't work with you, or they would have put them on in a different slot, and they would not have had the lead-in from Monday Night Raw. I mean, this was their demo. This was a young male audience. It was the perfect spot to put that show on it. And Vince McMahon said, sure, I have no problem with it. Go ahead and put the show on. And what ended up happening is The Ultimate Fighter became this just hugely successful thing. And it really helped UFC achieve this level of popularity that they never had before. And UFC had some just massively successful pay-per-views at that time that did millions of buys. And there's no way that those pay-per-views, as successful as they were, did not take away from WWE's pay-per-view business. It absolutely took away from WWE's pay-per-view business. Without question, it took away. Without question. So who knows how many millions of dollars that one decision ended up costing WWE. So I would think that that's probably a regret that, looking back, he may have had a different answer. Favorite Attitude Era mid-carder. I'm going to pick 2. D'Lo Brown, because I thought D'Lo was awesome. And Crash Holly. When Crash Holly was doing the Houdini of hardcore gimmick and all the 24/7 stuff with the hardcore title. Funtime USA. I used to go to Funtime USA all the time. That was where he was playing the arcades. He went down the super slide. He went into the ball pit. That might have been the best 24/7 segment they ever did. The Headbangers were chasing him. Fuck the Headbangers, by the way. So, yeah, he's being chased through Funtime USA. I used to have a lot of fun there. Unfortunately, Funtime USA has been gone now for a very long time. And in its place is a giant storage facility. There is no more Funtime. No more Funtimes here in Brooklyn, unfortunately. There used to be a bowling alley across the street from Funtime. I think it was... Oh, God, was it Maple Lanes or Rainbow Lanes, whatever it was called? That's gone. It's an empty building now. It's just an empty building. It's like an eyesore. It's ridiculous. Yeah, you got just a giant storage facility where Funtime USA used to be. Rabat from Derby, England. I was wondering if you could tell me about the story of Bob Holly's match at the 2004 Royal Rumble with Brock Lesnar. I heard he originally had 18 minutes for his match, but then it got cut short because Triple H and Shawn Michaels wanted to have a long main event. Bob also mentioned how he got in trouble with Vince McMahon because Triple H badmouthed him to Vince. Can you go into this story? Well, indeed I can. So in his book, which is great, by the way, The Hardcore Truth, I interviewed Bob it's probably 6 years ago now. Bob was great. He always treated me great. I've talked about this before because Bob Holly has a certain reputation, and I can't speak to that and the experiences that people who worked with him may have had and all that, but I could tell you that from the conversations he and I had, which was more than just the interview that I did with him, he was nothing but a stand-up guy. I thought his book was, it's called The Hardcore Truth. I thought he was very open and honest in his book about a lot of different things. It's one of the better wrestling books that I've ever read. Got a very nice message from him on my phone after my mother passed away. I was blown away by that. So, in my book, Bob Holly has been a stand-up guy. But he, in his book, he talked about how important that match with Brock was to him at that time, because Bob Holly was not a main eventer. Bob Holly was never positioned as a headliner. He never wrestled for the World Championship before that. He was a mid-card guy who they can plug in wherever they needed him. If it was a tag team with Cody Rhodes, if it was a tag team with Crash Holly, if it was the hardcore title, whatever it was, he was like a great utility player off the bench, if you want to look at it like that. So him challenging Brock Lesnar for the championship on pay-per-view was a very big deal. It was a very big deal for him. They were playing off the injury where Bob broke his neck taking a powerbomb on SmackDown from Lesnar in 2002. He claims he did not sandbag Brock. It was just a miscommunication in the match. It happens. And anyway, he was out for over a year. He had to have surgery. He was out for a very long time. And fast forward to the Rumble. Me too. I forgot the music was on. There we go. Turn that off. Fast forward to the Rumble in 2004. They're opening the show. Actually, no, they weren't opening the show. No, they didn't. They didn't open the show. But they were on, I think, before the Last Man Standing match between Shawn and Triple H. And they're wrestling for the WWE title. It really, in a lot of ways, if you think about it, it was the perfect kind of match you could have at the Rumble. You don't have to have a big-time match at the Rumble for the championship, and this was not a big-time match. But they were trying to, play off the history with the injury. And this was huge for Bob. This was huge. Even though he wasn't winning, I don't think anybody believed he was winning. That wasn't really the issue. It wasn't about him winning. Young Bibby, I did. I read your super chat earlier, unless you sent another one in. If you did, I'm going to get to it. I'm a little backlogged. But yeah, I mentioned you earlier. Young Bibby, you stepped away. You stepped away to use the John or to grab a drink, and you missed it. You can get it on the replay. Thank you, by the way. Thank you for the super chat. So the story here is that they were given 15 minutes. It wasn't 18 minutes. They were given 15 minutes, including entrances. And so he and Brock had a whole bunch of things planned that they were going to do in this match, and they get to the gorilla position. And they're about to go out for the match, and I don't know who it was, but somebody tells Bob, well, you no longer have 15 minutes, you now have 8 minutes, including entrances. So the match itself is probably more like 6 minutes. And all of a sudden, all these things they had planned, like they were going to take their time and build, with the drama and everything, they're literally about to walk out. And now you just told these guys, we've cut your time literally in half. You have half the amount of time that you thought you were going to have. And it just completely threw everything off. And the reason they did that is because, he says, Shawn Michaels and Triple H wanted that time. They wanted more time for their match, their last man standing match for the World Heavyweight title. And because they wanted that extra time, it got cut from Lesnar and Holly. So they went out there, they had a match that really was not all that great. Half the match was Bob being trapped in a bear hug by Brock. It wasn't very exciting. As far as Triple H bad-mouthing him, I think that was the Rene Dupree incident. There was an incident with Bob Holly and Rene Dupree that involved, well, I'll abbreviate here. It involved a rental car a parking ticket or some kind of ticket that Bob eventually got in the mail because of Renee, who then went on to deny the whole thing. And all that did was piss off Bob even more, because he thought, here's this young punk who's disrespecting me, and now he's lying to me. And during a match, Bob beat the shit out of him. He was very stiff with Dupree to the point that he ran to the back. Bob ran to the back with him, and he beat the piss out of him in the back. And apparently after that incident, I guess Triple H got in Vince's ear about what he did and how he should be fired for it. So Bob Holly does not have any love lost for Triple H. So that is the story of what happened there. Edwin Cardenas, I enjoyed listening for 5 years and hopefully many more. Happy anniversary. Thank you. King Bling, how do you recall topics you spoke about and episode numbers? Some of them I remember. I just remember some of them. Others I keep notes on all of the, if I did like a particular segment or a rant on something, when it's over, I'll mark it down. So I just keep kind of a running list of funny skits in the intros, or, some kind of special show or some moment that I want to make sure I remember. But some things I just remember, and other things people ask me about, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's weird. It's kind of similar where if you were to ask me about some things that happened in wrestling 30 years ago, I could probably tell you. And if you asked me, hey, what happened in this segment on Raw 2 weeks ago? I couldn't tell you. Couldn't even tell you. It's amazing how the brain works. Amari Johnson with the $13 for the 13-year anniversary. Buy, sell, or rent on these comedy gimmicks that got over. R-Truth's Little Jimmy, Al Snow's Mannequin Head, or Jericho's List of Jericho. Thank you for the work that you do. Don't underestimate how over Head was. Everybody wanted Head. Everybody wanted Head. Men wanted Head, women wanted Head, old people wanted Head, young people wanted Head, children wanted Head, which is actually disgusting. A lot of people wanted Head. It was a very popular thing. Al Snow got over in the late 90s. So I'm going to buy on Head. Going to buy on Head and sell on the rest. So there you go. He got over, man. He got over with that gimmick. I still have a mannequin head in my closet somewhere. I'm ashamed to say that I think I actually stole it out of a department store. I just wanted, because people would bring the mannequin heads, like the foam styrofoam heads, to the shows. And I think I was going to Raw, and I wanted a head with me. And I was in like a Mandy's or something, and it was like a real covert operation, because I knew they had the styrofoam heads. And I'm like watching to make sure they don't see me. I won't even get into the whole thing. All I know is I got my head. I took it home with me, and I still have it here somewhere. That's how crazy obsessed people were as wrestling fans back then. They were stealing mannequin heads from stores. It's crazy. I am a little ashamed. I finally have reached the $200 super chat that Magician Sapphire dropped earlier, which that actually, I believe, ties the biggest super chat I've ever received. I think you are now next to Professor John Gotti on the list of all-time super chats. So, Magician Sapphire, you have made history tonight. Wow. Says, in my honest opinion, he's talking about me. In my honest opinion, what is the top 3 best and worst finishers in pro wrestling? I mean, if we're talking all time, sharpshooter, Brett, look, I am kind of partial to Brett. The sharpshooter is an awesome move. And it works too. I can tell you that. I put that on my little brother when I was younger. He would scream and squeal. It was great. So the sharpshooter is definitely on the list. I'm not ranking them, by the way. Crossface chicken wing, Bob Backlund's move, was always a big fan of mine, or I was a big fan of the move. That's a very painful submission, by the way. I've had that applied to me. So I would say, yeah, I'm partial to the sharpshooter. I'm partial to the chicken wing. And how can you not say the Stone Cold Stunner? When Stone Cold was at his peak of popularity and he hit that move, man, there was absolutely nobody who could get the kind of reaction to a finish like Austin when he would hit that stunner. It was incredible. It was like wrestling bliss. But you know what I was also partial to? The power bomb. Just the basic power bomb. If you had a big, tall guy like a Diesel or a Sid, I always liked those Psycho Sid power bombs, even the way, Diesel would hit the jackknife. It's such a basic move. Vader would do a ridiculous... I mean, Vader broke a jobber's back once on a power bomb. So don't sell the power bomb short. Those are some of my favorites. Middleton with the $5 and Mike Engels with the $1. Thank you both for your support. Khalid Adam, happy 13th. Thoughts on Sting possibly joining AEW? I don't believe it's going to happen. I don't think we need to see Sting back in the ring if they wanted to bring him in as some kind of an ambassador. They have a video game coming out. If they can reach some kind of deal with Sting to get him in that new video game, and they can build a whole ad campaign around him being in the game, I think they might be able to sell a lot more video games. That's the kind of role I would see him in, but I don't see him coming in. I think people are getting their hopes up for no reason. James Hollins, which faction is the biggest mess with too many people? Dark Order, Spirit Squad, Aces and Eights, or Retribution? Where is Bullet Club? Bullet Club got pretty messy over the years. Retribution was a mess from day one. I wouldn't even put them on the list. They're not even worthy of being on the list. And Notorious Curtis 2001, do you think Benoit versus Undertaker at WrestleMania 19 or 22 would have been the better choice than the matches we got with Undertaker for those two Manias? Oh, absolutely. You mean you weren't riveted by Undertaker against the A-Train in the Big Show? That didn't tickle your fancy? Undertaker and Benoit would have been a great match. It would have been a great replacement. Absolutely. All right, so we did Craig, we did Rabat. Here we go. Now we're getting near the end here. Then we can take your super chats. Dan in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Has there been any word about the next Dynamite Diamond Ring tournament? Last year at this time, AEW held its Battle Royal to determine the winners to fight it out for the Diamond Ring, and I thought this would be an annual event. However, this year there has not been any mention yet of a second event. Do you think that it should be an annual one, or will it be more like WWE's King of the Ring, where they do it some years and not others? Well, they just did an eliminator tournament to crown a number one contender for the world title. So it's way too soon to do another tournament. And they have enough battle royals, I feel like, every few months. So I don't think it's anything that they intend to make an annual thing. I think it probably was a gimmick for MJF. When the time is appropriate, I think they'll bring it back. When there's a storyline purpose to bring it back. But it just looks to me like it was meant to be something for MJF to use as a weapon and get heel heat in his matches. And Donald in Opelousas, Louisiana. Which was the more shocking wrestling moment? Hulk Hogan turning heel and joining the NWO at Bash at the Beach 1996? Or Brock Lesnar ending the Undertaker's undefeated streak at WrestleMania 30? And which had a more significant impact on the wrestling business as a whole? That is a tough question. That is actually a great question. When I pasted it in to answer it here on the stream, I had to give that some thought. I was at WrestleMania 30. I was there live when Brock Lesnar beat The Undertaker, and everybody in my section thought the referee botched it because they didn't play the theme music at first. It was a while before they played Brock's music. We thought it was a mistake. And the referee was putting his hands up like he was almost like, oh, wait, we didn't know what was going on. The Brock Lesnar win over Undertaker it was the most shocking thing I was ever live for at any show. I mean, easily, without a doubt. But I think as far as the moment that had the most impact, that's an easy question. I mean, by far, it was the Bash at the Beach moment in 96. it carried WCW into 2-3 years of many millions of dollars and ratings dominance. I mean, it was what really brought them to that next level and led to this explosion during the Monday Night War. We had a real war going on between two companies, and it was all led by the Hogan heel turn and him joining the NWO. And even though some people probably did see it coming, it was still a shocking moment. It was still very shocking. I got to tell you, I probably would just, overall, I would give the edge to Hogan at Bash at the Beach. As shocking as Brock beating Undertaker was, believe me, the looks on people's faces, all those reaction shots was classic. It was awesome. But between the shock value and what really had a greater lasting impact, it's got to be the Hogan heel turn. It's got to be. This wasn't a buy or sell, but if it was, I would have to buy on Hogan at Bash at the Beach in 96 and sell on Undertaker losing to Brock. Far more important moment. Far more. I mean, it made mainstream news. Actual mainstream news outlets were covering Hulk Hogan becoming a bad guy. That's just not anything you would see today. I mean, it's unlike anything you could even imagine seeing in wrestling today. It's unbelievable. And I think it's hard to really explain to newer fans who just have a hard time understanding that. But it was just a very different time in wrestling back then. Achilles 311. What was your favorite moment of seeing Stephanie McMahon knocked flat by Triple H? I don't quite get the question. The only time I remember that was WrestleMania 18. I think Triple H gave her a pedigree. Christopher Auditor. Hi, Solomonster. Hope you're doing well. How would you have booked Cesaro after winning the Andre the Giant Battle Royal at WrestleMania 30? Well, I was a big fan of them putting him with Paul Heyman, and then they did fuck all with them. That was a gigantic ball drop. I mean, they dropped the ball big time on that. So I would have kept them together, and what I would have done is I would have taken my time, and I would have built to a program, and even if it was just one match, with Cesaro and Brock Lesnar. One Paul Heyman client and another Paul Heyman client. And you can't tell me that you couldn't have gotten a Royal Rumble championship match. I'm not saying WrestleMania main event worthy. I'm not even saying necessarily a SummerSlam match. It could have been. But even if it was like a Royal Rumble match or something for the championship, we never got one-on-one Brock Lesnar against Cesaro. The closest thing we've ever gotten was in the Royal Rumble this year. And Brock dumped him out, I think, in like 10 seconds. It was such a waste. I would have built up to that match, and then eventually Cesaro breaking away from Heyman as a babyface on his own. Still bothers me. I'm still pissed we never got that match. What a waste. Novaz with the $5. Do you think that Undertaker should have main evented WrestleMania 23 through 29, since those were the best matches on the show on those events? Do you think that Kane is underappreciated? I think people appreciate Kane. I think there's a lot of Kane appreciation on the internet, at least. So no, I don't think he's underappreciated. Undertaker, should he have main evented every single one of those WrestleManias? No. You're not gonna headline WrestleMania 28 with the Undertaker when you're in Miami and you have The Rock coming back to go one-on-one, his first singles match in 8 years against John Cena. Which, by the way, that is, I believe, still the highest grossing WrestleMania of all time. Undertaker was not the main event that night. So, to answer your question, my answer is no. Let's get through the rest of your super chats. And then I think we're done with the email questions. So it's basically just whatever super chat questions you've got for me, and then we can wind down. We had a hell of a stream here. Over 2 hours. I didn't think we'd go that long. It's awesome. And I still have so many questions I couldn't even get to. But keep sending them on in, because we're going to be doing more of these. They may not be 2 hours every single time, but we're going to do more of these. And I'm going to drink some more of the bubbly, because we are celebrating 13 years. In case you didn't know. Shaggy Domer. Question. With Survivor Series 2020 coming November 22nd. What is your favorite Survivor Series event of all time? My favorite Survivor Series event of all time is probably... You know what? It might be 1990. I have a soft spot for 1990. That was the one time they did that ultimate match of survival at the end. And that was the same night Undertaker also made his debut. I was a big fan of 90. I really like 95. They had a wild card match on that show. Brett and Diesel, probably the best match of their series of matches. Diesel's heel turn at the end. Yeah, I mean, those are probably the ones that really stand out for me, honestly. 90 and 95. Those might just be my favorites. Quizzical one. Been a listener since 2014. Here's Cameron Grimes. Cameron Grimes. Been a listener since 2014. How would a Bret Hart Kurt Angle program have panned out, and when would you have done it? Well, I would have done it in 2002. 2002, 2003, had Bret not had the stroke. I think what would have resulted probably are some of the best matches that we've ever seen in the history of the company. Just in terms of pure, work rate wrestling matches, telling a story in the ring. I think it would have been incredible. I think it sucks that we never got to see that match with those two guys. I'd say Bret in his prime. I don't know if he would have been in his physical prime at that point, but Kurt probably was. And Bret, if he didn't get hurt, if he didn't get concussed, he wasn't that old. I think it would have been incredible. Bret used to say that he would have dreams of wrestling Kurt. He would have Kurt in a headlock and then he would wake up. So literally it was Bret Hart's literal dream match. And I think for a lot of wrestling fans, it's a match that they probably would consider to be a dream match of theirs too. I mean, I think it just would have been incredible. Like I said, it sucks that we never got to see it. There's a lot of Bret Hart matches, unfortunately, due to his injury that we were deprived of, including a rematch with Shawn Michaels when Shawn came back. Naif Al-Safar with the $50 drop. Naif has become, can't even speak. He has become a very big fan of the show and a member of our community. He's in some of the Dynamite streams and everything. You hear his name mentioned on the show every Sunday. So Naif, I want to thank you for all of your support. Cigar Pat with the $20. Does the Solomonster ever enjoy a nice cigar? I've had one cigar in my life. That's it. I'm not really a cigar guy. Anything, cigarettes, cigars, pipes. My grandfather, when I was a kid, my grandfather had a pipe. I still have his pipe, actually. He would smoke up one of those old pipes, and I hated that smell. Oh, I hated that smell so much. So, I work in the city. Not at the moment, I don't, but I'd be walking down the sidewalk sometimes in Manhattan, and there would be some businessman walking, and I could tell he was smoking a pipe because I could smell it. I could sniff it out, and he'd be in front of me, so. The whiff of it would hit me, and I would just turn and go the opposite way. I can't stand that smell. Cigars aren't bad, though, but I don't partake. I've been to cigar bars with friends, but usually when I'm there, I'll just, I'll drink. I don't really smoke. Dry chicken without flavor, the good son scenario. Both heels, MJF or Jay White. Pull one up and let the other go. Thinking of the Macaulay Culkin movie, are we? There's a Macaulay Culkin and the guy from Lord of the Rings, Elijah Wood. That's what I call him. When I can't think of his name, I'm like, who's that guy from the Lord of the Rings? Ah, yes, it's Elijah Wood, right? Never-Ending Story. Was he in the Never-Ending Story, or am I thinking of somebody else? Pull one up and let the other one die. Oh, man. I've got to pull up MJF. Just for the promos. Got to pull up MJF. Corbin Rogers, what if they build Randy against Bray? Around the time Randy Orton punted Husky Harris in the head and it caused Bray to become crazy and become the person that he is today. I think that's a bit of a reach. You could do it. You could tell that story, but I think at this point, it's a bit of a reach. Maybe if they did it a few years ago. Juan Ocampo, the one and only. The one and only Juan Ocampo. Play the RSPW music, please. I want to juggle to it. I don't have it handy. I don't have it handy at the moment. But there'll be a new RSPW dropping in the next few weeks. I'm just pulling the threads together. I had to put the brakes on it because I'm running low on threads. I'm looking for new ones, but eventually I'm not going to be able to find any more. So I'm trying to do them a little more seldomly so we can preserve what's left. I have about 4 pages worth of links left, which sounds like a lot, but it really isn't. So you'll be hearing that music again very soon. I promise you, RSPW is not dead. Zantara says, Wood was not in the Neverending Story. That was Noah Hathaway. Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure. I said it, and then it just didn't make any sense. CJ LaChapelle, one of our mods in the chat, says, have you done hookah? Yes. Yes, I have. Eddie Barber. What WCW pay-per-view would you like to see NXT bring back next? I personally would like to see Sold Out return and the whole pay-per-view have it in black and white. Well, I definitely don't want to see that. I want to see that about as much as I want to see that Fiend red light come back. Well, now that we got Halloween Havoc back and we have Starrcade, right? They've used that for house shows. I always thought Bash at the Beach was a cool concept. And if you could do it from an actual beach or like a spring break location or something, I would love to see like an outdoor spring break themed show, even if I say spring break, even if it was in the summer, and use the Bash at the Beach name. And I would, why not Super Brawl? Whatever happened to Super Brawl? If they own the rights to it, why not use it? Food Hive. Actually, I think Naif dropped another $50. I don't think that's a repeat. I think he dropped another 50. Naif, what is going on? Naif Al-Safar, you just paid for some of the phone calls that I'm going to be charged for in the next few weeks on my stream, so I thank you. Those calls do cost money, by the way. That's why I've had to cool it on the calls a little bit, but thank you very much. Very nice of you. Food Hive, it's my fault for suggesting that cross-eyed Solomonster as a super chat. I remember that stream like it was yesterday. And now we got Crying Big Show on the screen. Somebody is showing him on his phone that he has been called to duty to Monday Night Raw this week. Iqbal. Been listening since 2014. Listen every Sunday and Wednesday. Thank you for everything you do. Do you think Moxley and Omega should be similar to what Okada Omega was? Oh, no. 2 totally different things. I mean, it's just 2 totally different things. I think they could go out there and have a great match. But the kind of match that Okada and Omega had is one of these matches that you just know it's going to go 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 60 minutes. They're going to take their time. It's going to build and build and build. I don't think that's the kind of match that Omega and Moxley should have. I really don't. Not that it shouldn't tell a story and they should take their time to build, but 20 or 30 minutes max. Maybe 20 or 25 minutes. We don't need to see any 45-minute epics between Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega. But thank you for the question. Notorious Curtis, how would Chris Benoit be remembered today if the tragedy never occurred and he only committed suicide? Would he be remembered similarly to how Eddie is today? I think, it's still very taboo, I think, for WWE to acknowledge people who have taken their own lives. He would absolutely be remembered differently. The reason Chris Benoit is reviled and remembered as the way he is not just because he killed himself. People take their own lives every day. It's unfortunate. And far too many wrestlers have done that over the years. But to take the life of another person, to take the life of not only your wife, but your 7-year-old son, there's just no justification for that. There's no justification for that. And the minute he did that, he was forever marked. And he forever stained his legacy. And some people, I understand they can't go back and watch old Benoit matches. I get that. I totally understand that. I don't have any problem going back and watching it. It makes me sad, but I can go back and watch a Chris Benoit match if I want to. I don't do it very often, but if I wanted to, I wouldn't have any issue with it. But as far as him being remembered as, oh man, Chris Benoit, he was the greatest, or we should put him in the Hall of Fame one day, you've got to be brain dead. Seriously, you have to be brain dead to still be among those arguing that Chris Benoit belongs in the Hall of Fame. And it just blows my mind that there are still people who can't separate the two, who still try to make the argument that Chris Benoit one day will be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Justice for Benoit. He should be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Blows my mind. He will never, ever, ever be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Nor should he be. It is inexcusable what he did. And we will never know what was going through his mind at the time. And you could talk about CTE and all that, and oh, well, his brain was riddled. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Unfortunately, there's a lot of athletes who have CTE who don't even know it, or who have CTE and they kill themselves, or they end up taking their own life, but not their son, not a child. You're irredeemable. Once you've done that, irredeemable. There is absolutely no justification for it, or the idea that he would be honored in a hall of... I mean, think about how batshit crazy that would be. We're going to honor this guy. We're going to pretend this never happened. We're going to act like this never happened, and we're going to put him in our Hall of Fame. Oh, we'll slip him in there quietly as a legacy inductee. Yeah, I'm sure nobody will notice that. I don't understand what goes through people's heads, that they still think that there's even a slim possibility of that happening. There's a better chance of me going into the WWE Hall of Fame as a fan than Chris Benoit. Isaiah says, I love you. I love you too. Turtlehead, congrats on 13. You're my go-to show. You're my go-to for the shows I can't watch. Thanks for putting up with my nonsense in the chat. Shout out to the chat. We love Turtlehead. Tamara Davis, one of our mods. Hey, Tamara, what's going on? What do you think about Alex Hammerstone from MLW? Haven't seen as much of him as I would like, but what I've seen of him, I think he's going to be a much bigger star one day. If I had to guess where? Well, I can't take a guess. I have no idea where. I have no idea what his aspirations are, but I think he'll definitely be a bigger star out of MLW one day, whether it's NXT or AEW. If he goes to AEW, right, he's got some history with MJF, I believe. Maybe he ends up there. EJ, been listening for 6 years. Thanks for being an inspiration to me. I am planning to start a vlog when COVID is over about my goal of going to all 30 Major League Baseball parks. So far, I have been to 10. So 1/3 down. Well, keep me posted on that. There are people who have done that, and they blog about it as well. I think that's very cool. Unfortunately, like you said, it is the age of COVID where you've got these giant stadiums now that are totally empty. And who knows when people, be allowed to get back in there. The Mets, they have a new owner now. Steve Cohen is the brand new owner of the New York Mets. And I look forward to the day where I get to go back to Citi Field for a Mets game, but I don't think that's going to be for a while. Spanish Goddish, who is more underrated during their time, EC3. For sure. Sean O'Hare had potential, but EC3 was, you talk about a waste of talent. You talk about somebody who had already established that he could be a success somewhere else. Not even Sean O'Hare did that. EC3 proved that if you got behind him, maybe he wasn't the greatest wrestler in the world, but there was a persona there, there was a personality there, there was verbal ability there you could have worked with, and they just never even gave the guy a shot. Never. Sean O'Hare, I don't remember exactly what derailed his push. I think it might have been him. Because I know he got into some trouble. I don't remember if he got into trouble with the law during his run in WWE or if he got in trouble when he left. But I got to go with EC3 on that. Sean Turner, people mentioned WWE stuff that they can't do anymore. One that no one talks about that I wished I saw was Eugene. I have a soft spot for stereotypes. Hey, whatever floats your boat. Whatever floats your boat. Spanish Goddess, who is the better tag team in your opinion? Powers of Pain or Power and Glory? Power and Glory. You talk about underrated. Love their finish. I love the Powerplex finish for Power and Glory. They could have been tag team champions. They could have had a short run as tag team champions. Leather, boy, we got a lot of super chats here. Leather Rebel, happy Friday the 13th from Chile, or Chile. I gotta say it the right way, from Chile. AJ Daniels, buy, sell, and rent on these comedic tag teams, the Rock and Sock Connection, Booker T and Goldust, or Team Hell No. I would go Rock and Sock number 1, Booker T and Goldust number 2, and Team Hell No number 3. Exactly in the order that you listed them in. Paul Heyman sent $3 in via Super Chat. Thank you, Paul Heyman. Tenorio128. Boy, you would think Paul Heyman could splurge a little bit more, but I digress. What are the top 5 Raw free TV matches? Oh, I don't know. I got to think more about that. Just some off the top of my head. The one I mentioned earlier. Austin and Triple H against Jericho and Benoit. Bret Hart against 1-2-3 Kid in 94 for the WWF title. The 10-man tag on Raw in Dallas in 2000. It was Rock, Cactus Jack, Rikishi, and Too Cool against Triple H and the Radicals. That's definitely on the list. So yeah, those are some of them. Michael Cuomo, Cameron Grimes' finisher, the Cave-In, is one of the best looking moves in wrestling right now. See, I like Cameron Grimes, but I'm still not a big fan of that move. Some of the times he hits it, it's very awkward. Dry Chicken, do you remember Deuce and Domino? I do. Kind of wish I didn't. James Hollins, who had more members, Bullet Club or NWO? Oh, NWO. I think at one point everybody in the company was in the NWO. Bullet Club was like a wannabe NWO. They didn't quite get the same number of members, but they tried. They didn't quite reach that goal, though. Novaz, which was worse, Jinder Mahal's reign of terror or Triple H's reign of terror? Also, do you think that Jinder Mahal killed SmackDown Live in 2017? I wouldn't say he killed SmackDown Live. The Triple H reign of terror was worse. I mean, it just dominated Monday Night Raw. Just annoyingly so. It dominated the show in a way that I don't remember Jinder really dominating the show. I really wasn't much a fan of either one, but I think the Triple H one was worse. Tyler Mask, glad to say I've been here for 6 going on 7 years. My question is, a lot of us get excited to see you come on here and rant, but what are your 3 shows that you were proud to cover? Oh boy. I think the first one that I really was proud of, there was this great article that somebody on the Cage Side Seats website did. And I don't remember what year this would have been. It might have been 2009. I'm trying to think. No, it would have had to be a little bit later. So we're probably talking 2011-ish maybe? 2011, 2012. But there was this big expose on the way that TNA Wrestling was treating its female talent. And I kind of piggybacked off that article. That was one that I was proud of because it was something that needed to be said. It was something that really, at the time, the way they treated Daphne with her concussions, and it was really awful stuff. I mean, there were women's wrestlers in TNA at the time who were barely getting by, who had a second job working at a sunglass hut stand in the middle of a mall. And there's no shame in working at a sunglass hut, but the point is, I think at the time, it might have been Madison Rayne or somebody, she was the women's champion. There was some really weird stuff going on at the time with the way the women were being treated and compensated at the time in TNA. So I remember being proud of that. My favorite episode is episode 495, which was the Mother's Day Madness show I did when I got my mom on the show. People liked her more than they liked me. But she passed away less than a year later. I was going to make that an annual thing. And one of my great regrets is not having her on years earlier. You know, I always do my show on a Sunday. Mother's Day always falls on a Sunday. I don't know why it took me that many years to finally get her on. And I really regret not having her on sooner. But that would be my favorite of all the episodes that I've done. I think we only have a few left here, so let's wrap up with Amari Johnson and a few more. If Austin does not get hurt, Brock never leaves for NFL UFC, or Rock doesn't go to Hollywood, what changes for Cena and Triple H in their title counts? Well, they get a lot less of them. They get a lot fewer titles, but I still think Triple H would have had numerous title reigns. John Cena would have become a big star. I just think it would have been pushed back. People have asked me that. What if Brock stayed? If Brock stayed, John Cena, I think, still would have had his run, but it would have taken him a little bit longer to get there. Not too much longer. I would say it would have had more of an impact on Batista, honestly. I think Cena was going to go on to big things no matter what, but I really think if Brock would have stayed, I think it would have hurt Batista more than it would have hurt John Cena. Because instead of having Cena here and Batista here, I think you would have had Brock here and Cena here. And Batista might have been the one to take a back seat. Duff's Vids with the $15 says happy 13th. With AEW not going in the direction of a sports-based wrestling promotion as promised, do you think that this has driven away potential fans who are looking for a WWE alternative? It's driven away some. I know that because I hear from them all the time. I got so much hate for saying that I thought Full Gear was one of the best shows of the year. You wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe the hate mail and the hate comments on YouTube I got for saying that. Even though I was clearly in the majority of people who had that opinion. Apparently me saying that I thought Full Gear was one of the better shows of the year makes me an AEW ass kisser. You know what I find funny about that? You talk about brain damage. There is unfortunately a lot of brain damage in the wrestling community online. And I always laugh when I get messages from people when I compliment AEW for something, or I say, man, this was a great show. And then I'll get messages from people who say, you're just kissing AEW's ass. And then when I compliment something with WWE, there are still people who will call me, oh, you're a WWE ass kisser. That was the worst show I ever saw. How could you have liked that? You're just a WWE mark. And to say that to me, of all people, I mean, all you can do is laugh. So that's why I really don't pay any attention to comments like that. I mean, I like getting feedback from people, but comments like that, I just can't take seriously, right? Because it just illustrates you cannot please everybody. So all you can do is just do your thing. Don't cater to one or the other. Don't sugarcoat your opinions. I just give you my opinions unfiltered as they are. If I liked something, and I think this is why people have stuck with my show for 13 years. If I like something, I'm going to tell you I like it, and I'm going to tell you why. If I think something sucks, but everybody else liked it, I'm not going to be the kind of host who goes, oh, well, I liked it too. No, I thought it was fucking garbage, and here's why. I tell you what I think. If you don't like that, that's fine. But if you listen to these comments, I'm both an AEW ass kisser and a WWE ass kisser, but I also am an AEW hater, and I'm a WWE hater. You know what that tells me? That tells me I'm doing a good job. When you say that I'm a hater and a lover of this product, and I'm a hater and a lover of this product, yeah, now you're finally getting it. I like some of what they do, and I hate some of what they do. That goes for WWE and AEW. Fucking moron. Should see some of these just dipshit comments I'll get sometimes that make absolutely no sense. And it just amuses me. I find it entertaining. Got a few more that came in here. Cody Thomas. Oh, it's out of control. Cody Thomas. What's going on, Cody? Would you like to see Katrina return as a valet? And if so, in AEW or NXT? I would like to see her in AEW. That's where I would like to see her. But as long as she's back on TV, I mean, I would love for her and Mil Muertes to come back together, even if it's with different names. But I just think the act would probably work better in AEW. Because I kind of feel like we already have something like that in NXT with Karrion Kross and Scarlett. So I think AEW would be the better choice. Dried Chicken, Jason Voorhees against Michael Myers in a fight. Would be no competition. Jason would destroy Michael Myers. I like both of them. I can't go against Jason. It's my namesake. But I've become a huge Michael Myers fan over the years. Halloween's that's my thing, man. I love the Halloween movies. So, I mean, I would say that they would probably just kick each other's ass. I mean, they both can't die, so it's pointless to try to pick a winner between them. Chris Ludek, question for you. Better WrestleMania match, WrestleMania 6, Hogan against Warrior, or WrestleMania 7, Warrior against Macho Man? Very good question. You know, it's kind of strange to think that the Ultimate Warrior, for all the crap people talk about him and his matches, and rightfully so, he had back-to-back the best matches on the WrestleMania card, back-to-back years, with two different people. Of the two matches, Hogan Warrior is the more iconic match. I mean, it's just a far bigger match. But I really love the match from WrestleMania 7. And I love the story that played out when the match was over with Sherry and Elizabeth. I love it. I love showing the woman in the front row crying and Bobby Heenan saying, oh, maybe her shoes are too tight. Maybe she had the chili dog with onions. I loved everything about that. Thought it was great. James Hollins, The Fiend, against Demon Balor at WrestleMania. Yeah, I mean, they never did the match. So at some point, we should probably get the Demon and the Fiend. Spanish Goddess, who is the nicest and rudest wrestler that you have met. Also, has any wrestlers ever blocked you on Twitter? Cornette just blocked me. Well, why did Cornette block you? What did you say to get blocked by Cornette? What did you say that got you blocked by Jim Cornette? First of all, I am blocked by a lot of people on Twitter. Boy, who am I blocked by? Well, Seth Rollins blocked me, but, you know, not surprising. Rollins blocked me. Shawn Michaels blocked me a long time ago. Even though I've met him a whole bunch of times, he blocked me. Oh, yeah, I mean, a whole bunch of people. You know, the clips from the show, they watch them. And when they hear something they don't like, they get very snippy and snooty, and then they block you on Twitter. That's what happens. They can't handle the criticism. But as far as like the nicest and the rudest wrestlers I've ever met, I mean, I've been fortunate. A lot of the wrestlers I've met have been pretty nice. You know, when I did all those interviews a few years ago, I think it was in Orlando at the big wrestling convention, WrestleCon. And I was doing interviews for Fight TV. And I was able to just walk the floor. I had my own cameraman. I had the mic in my hand. I got so many great interviews. That was the one with the headbangers, you know, Mosh spit all over me. But I interviewed them. I interviewed just a whole bunch of people. I got a sit-down interview with Mean Gene, which was fantastic. The one person, the only guy who I tried to get an interview with, who basically blew me off, once he realized I wasn't paying him, he wanted me to pay him $100, was the Honky Tonk Man. He saw me and my camera guy coming towards him to ask if I can get an interview, and he basically was, once he realized he wasn't getting paid, he was like, yeah, get out of here. And I'm like, well, you can go fuck yourself. And I moved on, and so that was really it. I mean, I haven't really had too many, I would say, negative, I would say I've had too many negative experiences, honestly. And I'll tell you another story about that. Just to pile on Honky here. You go back to Miami, WrestleMania 28 weekend. The convention that weekend was Wrestle Reunion. And Honky Tonk Man was there. Jake the Snake was there. And Jake, clearly Jake was still in the grips of his of his demons at that time. This was pre-DDP. And I'll never forget it. Honky Tonk Man is hanging out with Jake, and I remember him trying to I think he was trying to give Jake a drink. And I think he ended up giving him one or something, but it was, I don't know, it was just weird because you knew that like that was the last thing that you should probably be doing with Jake, and yet he was like pawning it on him, and I just thought, man, what a dick. You know? So, yeah, I don't think much of him. DDP was really nice. I interviewed him twice, but I actually met him once. He did a whole DDP yoga thing here in New York, so I went and I did it. I remember that because it was in a giant room. There must have been 100 people in there doing DDP yoga. It smelled like shit. But I remember this because he knew who I was, and I was doing one of the moves wrong. And out of this entire room of like 85 people or 100 people doing DDP yoga, he saw me doing one of the moves incorrectly, and he called me out like in the middle of this thing, like, Jason, you're doing it wrong. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. But then we were chatting after. He was really cool. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the guys I've met have been pretty cool, and a couple of other ones who weren't, but I'll leave them nameless. Let's see who else we got here. Alex Jimenez. Happy birthday from Florida. Happy birthday. Oh, it's his birthday. Happy birthday. Hoping WWE brings back fans soon. Or maybe he is saying happy birthday to me. It's the birthday of the show. I think that's what he means. Well, thank you. Spanish Goddess, you should check out Chris Bay. Dude has potential. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about Chris Bay. Jackalope, shout out to Magician Sapphire on the tied spot on top all-time Super Chats. Awesome stream tonight. Thank you. And Food Hive, I think Food Hive might be the last one. Was Jinder Mahal the only current world champion that you interviewed? No. I interviewed Daniel Bryan when he was the world heavyweight champion. WrestleMania 28 weekend, Radio Row. Got a spot at the table. Here comes Daniel Bryan. I mean, we're up at 6:30 in the morning to do interviews. And I figured, okay, we're going to get some of like the mid-card or lower card guys. Here comes Daniel Bryan. He didn't have the belt with him, but here comes Daniel Bryan. This was 48 hours before he lost the title in 18 seconds to Sheamus. And he was great. Talked to him for a good 10 or 12 minutes. I feel like I interviewed another world champion. I've interviewed a lot of people, actually, and I can't remember. There might have been another world champion I interviewed. I interviewed Jay Lethal many years ago. I don't remember if he was Ring of Honor champion. He might have been Ring of Honor champion at the time. I don't remember. But, yeah, no, I've interviewed a few champions. Dried Chicken, wishing a good night to one and all. Terrence with the super chat. Buy or sell on which match was the worst? Warrior Hogan Halloween Havoc or Goldberg Lesnar at WrestleMania 20? Goldberg and Lesnar at WrestleMania 20 was more like a car crash. It was kind of like awful, but you can't really look away. Warrior Hogan was just a fucking debacle. It was an embarrassment. So I'm going to buy on Brock and Goldberg. Quentis, who do you got winning the New Japan Super J Cup 2020? You know, I haven't seen all the people who are in the Super J Cup, so I can't really comment on that right now. I got to play catch up on that. And Quentis, you got the X-Pac rules guy in the Super Chat. Look at this freak with his open shirt. Probably the only guy in the building with that sign that night. Desmond the Wolf with the AJ Styles Flat Earth Society Super Chat. Favorite childhood moment? Mine was my 10th birthday when Dean Ambrose cashed in Money in the Bank on Seth Rollins. Boy, you make me feel real old now. Favorite childhood wrestling moment? Man, that's tough. There were a lot of really happy moments from things that I watched. I'll tell you this, and I have no shame in saying this. I'm not embarrassed by it. Because I look back on it now, and it was really shitty what they did to Brett. But when Hulk Hogan came out of WrestleMania 9, and it was like cashing in Money in the Bank, basically, and he beat Yokozuna, and he won the title, I was elated. I thought that was so cool. As a child, I just thought that was, man, Hogan's the champion again. And they played Real American, and everyone's going crazy. I marked out. I don't mark out so much now when I go back and watch it, but as a kid, and I say as a kid, I wasn't young, but I was young enough. I remember that being a fun moment. So, I think that is it. I think that we are all caught up. Wow. How about that? Man, you guys tired me out. That's the most questions that I have ever answered in one sitting ever. We've gone almost 3 hours with your questions here. That was amazing. And this bubbly was really good. I'm sad I didn't drink more of it. I'll have to have more when we go off here. So, we are definitely going to do more of these inboxes. So what I would like for you guys to do, first of all, send me some feedback on Twitter, @Solomonster. I want to let more people know about this mailbox. So if you tweet me, if you liked it, I'll retweet you. And let me know your feedback. If you liked it, you want more of them. Email me your questions, thesolomonster@gmail.com. I'm going to, I'll put the final screen on in a second. You'll see the email address on the screen. That is the place to email your questions to. But you can also leave questions down below in the comments section. And I will go through all of the comments. I will pick out certain questions to use on the next stream, whenever that may be. I don't know when the next one will be, so tune into the shows. Follow me on Twitter @Solomonster. You see my little handle there. There it is. There's the little tweeter bird. And I will keep you guys posted. I was serious, though. Maybe I'll give some thought to doing maybe a New Year's Eve stream, if you guys are down. I mean, since in a lot of places in this country, I think New Year's is kind of going to be fucked this year. I don't think people are going to be going out the way they used to. Maybe we'll ring in the new year together. And we'll answer some more questions, and we'll get rid of this awful year, and we can ring in 2021 together if you guys are down for that. And let's see if we can get these likes up on this video. I didn't mention that. Thank you, Holden Caulfield. Catcher in the Rye. In the chat. Yes, please hit that like button if you like this video. Get those likes up. We got another super chat. We got another super chat here. Spanish Goddish. Who was better, Mr. Perfect or Rick Rude? Mr. Perfect and Rick Rude, best friends. I was a Mr. Perfect guy. Not taking anything away from Rick Rude. He had a lot of success, especially in WCW. But I was a Mr. Perfect guy. I gotta go on Mr. Perfect there. And Off Leather Wings. I just joined a wrestling school to be a referee. Who are some of your favorites? And he said, damn, I just noticed you're closing the show already. Yeah, you came in on the ass end of the stream here. But this is going to be archived. You can go back and watch it. Share it with other people. Earl Hebner, to me, he's my guy. Earl Hebner was the referee that I grew up on. He was always the senior official. Earl Hebner had those dramatic 3 counts. He would hit the 1. He would take his time. He would hit the 2. He would really take his time. But I like that, though. I like that. Some of the most dramatic pinfalls to these big classic matches were those slow Earl Hebner counts. So I'm a big Earl Hebner guy. Earl Hebner, Mike Chioda, Tim White. Those are some of my favorites. All right, guys, I'm going to head on out of here. We almost made it a full 3 hours tonight. Your super chats were just incredible. You guys were amazing tonight. Thank you for celebrating 13 years with me. We had a lot of people join tonight, which I thought was really cool that people could come on in and celebrate with me. So I'm going to head on out of here. I'm going to be back with you again on Sunday. That's going to be episode 678 of the Solomonster Sounds Off. So I hope you will tune in then, and then back live again next week for Dynamite. My Dynamite recap, and I'll probably be doing Survivor Series predictions next Thursday. Live on YouTube. I'll keep you guys posted on that as well. So you see our last question from Donald earlier as we play ourselves out on the inbox. Shout out to Steve Mello for the amazing artwork. He and I together, we tag teamed on this. He makes the art. I put the questions in there. We're a good tag team. We're a better tag team than anybody in WWE right now. So shout out to Steve for all of his amazing support. And I will see you guys again soon. Until next time, be well, stay safe, and take care, guys. You guys are amazing. More bubbly.